Okay. I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. All rise for the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So next is roll call.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
That concludes roll call.
Thank you. Are there any late changes to the agenda?
There are no late changes, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this next part is the general public comment for items not listed on the agenda. So do we have anyone out there to talk, to have public comments that are on a subject not on the agenda tonight? Okay. I'm sorry. Oh,
We don't have any general comments. It looks like they're all related to agenda items.
all right, thank you. Okay, so next will be the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve the consent agenda items A, B, C, and D.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? It's been approved. Next is the proclamation for the LGBTQ plus allyship. I will read this, and I don't know if there's a representative here. And this is for the this is for Pride. And then yours is next, and this is it. Yes. All right. Well, I am so proud that we can celebrate this month. And so I'm going to start reading it. The City of Mountlake Terrace Proclamation, LGBTQ plus Pride Month. Whereas on June 28, 1969, New York City police raided the Stonewall Inn, a gay club located in Greenwich Village, and sparked a riot, leading to 6 days of protests and violent clashes with law enforcement known as the Stonewall Riots, which later served as a catalyst for the LGBTQ plus rights movement. And whereas, in honor of the 1969 Stonewall Uprising and subsequent First Pride March in New York City in June of 1970, each June, Americans come together to celebrate and honor the LGBTQ plus community. And whereas we celebrate and reflect upon the courage and accomplishments of the LGBTQ plus community who continue to fight for progress towards securing important rights and freedoms to live freely and authentically. And whereas since 1969, the LGBTQ plus community achieved significant progress, including the right to marriage equality, state and federal workplace protections, and the Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And whereas currently the LGBTQ plus community faces growing challenges both in the United States and worldwide from those seeking to divide rather than unite, making it a crucial time bringing together voices to continue advocating for LGBTQ plus rights. And whereas the City of Mountlake Terrace values diversity and inclusion and equal rights and justice, and is committed to continuing to embrace these values. And whereas the city supports staff and community members who represent the LGBTQ plus community and recognize our shared humanity, and will continue working together to create a better future. So now, therefore, I, Mayor Kyoko Matsumoto Wright, On behalf of the Mountlake Terrace City Council, do hereby proclaim June as LGBTQ+ Pride Month, and is proclaimed by the City Council on June 5th, 2025. And here to receive this is Carter. I remember Carter from the other. You want to say something here? And then we can do photos if you want.
I want to thank you, Mayor Wright, and thank you to the council and the city of Mountlake Terrace for honoring Pride Month this year. This is really special to me as a member of the LGBTQ+ community to see the growth that we've seen in our city and to see our city council honoring this month. It wasn't always easy for me growing up as part of the community here in Mountlake Terrace and seeing the progress over the years. And our city being part of that progress is really special to me, so thank you.
Make a what? Okay.
Hello, I just wanted to also acknowledge Rowan Soizet, who is the director of Edmonds Pride, and couldn't be here tonight, but they have a lot of things going on this month. And right now they're at the Linwood Skate and Bowl for the Edmonds School District Pride Month celebration, which the city is also sponsoring. So just wanted to let you know about those activities as well. So here we go. Picture.
Do the rest of the council want to come? So Carolyn, are you going to give this to the other? And then now we have a proclamation for Juneteenth, and that will be read by our council member Page.
Hello. Any representatives for the Juneteenth want to come on up, please? Okay, the City of Mountlake Terrace Proclamation, Juneteenth, Independence Day. Whereas President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation took effect on January 1st, 1863, stating in part that all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be thenceforward and forever free. And whereas it was not until June 19, 1865, that the enslaved people of Galveston, Texas, were at last informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. And whereas this day and event, recognized as Juneteenth, marks the effective end of chattel slavery in the United States, further codified with the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States on December 6th of that year. And whereas Juneteenth is the oldest observed celebration of the emancipation of enslaved persons in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth, National Independence Day, became a federal holiday on June 17th, 2021, as well as a legal state holiday in Washington on July 25th, 2021. And whereas on May 2nd, 2022, the Mountlake Terrace City Council adopted Resolution 863 establishing Juneteenth as a legal city holiday, and whereas Juneteenth, like Independence Day on the 4th of July, is a celebration of freedom that is important to our community and country. And whereas the City of Mountlake Terrace invites our community to join a celebration of Juneteenth more than a day, co-sponsored with the Snow Owls Libraries on Civic Campus on Father's Day, June 15th, between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., featuring a panel discussion about father figures and many community activities. Now, therefore, Mayor Kyoko Matsumoto Wright, on behalf of the Mountlake Terrace City Council, do hereby proclaim June 19th as Juneteenth Independence Day, proclaimed by the City Council on June 5th, 2025.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Page, and thank you, Councilmember Woodard, and the entire City Council of the City of Mountlake Terrace. I just want to say a few quick thanks here. Thanks to Snow Owl Libraries. Thank you, Kristen Pifo, Terry Lott, Vanessa Gutierrez, who wasn't able to attend today, Andrew from the city. So many people have been vital into making this happen. I really appreciate it. This is a super amazing project. Thank you to Project Access, Community Transit, Project Girl, and so many other supporters, Change the Narrative, and everyone else. It's a pretty big, long list, and thank you so much.
Okay. So next on the agenda is the review and vote on agreements for flock camera system with our Commander Scott King and our city manager? No. You'll be here for answer any questions.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have of the flock system before you vote. Most of the community comments that were out there can be covered in the policy, which people have access to here tonight. And excuse me, I will also cover a few additional points that were brought up. Also here with me is Kristen McLeod from Flock to help answer any questions, and she's online. I'll start with, there was an article with ICE taps into the Flock system. So ICE didn't actually tap into the system. Flock doesn't even have a contract with ICE. There were agencies around the country who do work with ICE, and they ran vehicles through the Flock system for ICE. The reason that they used in their search was ICE. We don't do that here in Washington State. One, it's against the law for us to do immigration stuff as law enforcement officers. And the other reason we won't do it, it's also in our policy to not do so. Another question that came up was, what information do other departments have access to? So we choose who we share our information with, and we also own our information. When participating agency does run a search, they only get hits on a specific vehicle or a narrow search of what they're looking for. They don't get access to our entire database that's available. We don't even get access to the entire database unless we have, or all we get access to is our specific search. So if whatever vehicle we're looking for, that's all we get. we can't look back into the database and nobody else gets access to that as well. The flock system will be audited by the department's assigned administrator quarterly, who will be me. There will also be random audits within the system throughout the year. We will be sharing information with our local partners who are accredited agencies. Also, before sharing this information, the agencies will sign an MOU which states that they won't use information from the system for immigration purposes. The Everett Police Department currently does this. If an agency uses our information for reasons we don't approve of, I can automatically delete them from our system with a click of a button. We will not share information outside of Washington State as well. Another question was, does the information truly get erased after 30 days? Does it get backed up anywhere? It does truly get erased. It would be a breach of contract with Flock if it was kept over 30 days. It would also cost Flock and the city money to keep it past the 30-day mark. And the only way to keep it past 30 days would be a council vote to do so. It is hard deleted and unrecoverable after the 30 days. It cannot be sold to third parties. The only way it could be sold to third parties is upon council approval. Flock does not use facial recognition. If they did, it would be outside of our user agreement in a breach of contract, and we would stop our use of Flock. We do not have audio recording. It is a totally different system within Flock, and we will not be installing that system, and we have no intention to ever install that system. The Flock agreement itself is a 2-year subscription model contract. Flock owns the equipment. If we don't have the funds or decide that Flock's not for our city or it's not working for us, we can cancel within the first year, and then we don't have to pay for the second year, and they will come get their equipment. Misuse of Flock. The policy states any misuse may result in revocation of Flock access and discipline leading up to termination. There will be a transparency portal on our department webpage where the public can check and see what we are doing. There will be a public audit file within the transparency portal. This will show what searches have been done, reasons for the search, and the actual camera used in the search. If the public doesn't feel like looking up the information on the transparency portal, I will be providing Flock data in my quarterly police reports to council. No one can bypass the audit and erase information, not even Flock. So any of the audit information, if somebody did something wrong, they can't go back and erase it. I can't go back and erase it, and Flock can't go back and erase it. So it's in there. Users are prohibited from sharing passwords for Flock. This would be subject to discipline leading up to termination. Camera locations within the city. So we will have 9 cameras, or proposed 9 cameras. The placement of these cameras is based on where we likely think people will be running from after they commit a crime. They're main city roads. They're not in neighborhoods. And we also considered the camera locations based on where Edmonds and Linwood are placing their cameras, so we could get the most bang for our buck on those borders between those 2 cities. And as I mentioned before, no cameras will be placed in neighborhoods. False positive stops, that question came up. So this sort of thing happens occasionally with stolen vehicles. Either a plate's put in wrong, or someone recovers their vehicle without telling the police. We've had plenty of those stops in the past. We always stop, any stop we do that's under suspicion of a crime, we always make those stops as an investigative stop, and we always treat people with dignity, and we treat them right during those stops, and we would if there was any false positives with the Flock thing as well. Upgrades to the system, as long as we are in a contract with Flock, the software and the hardware are updated automatically, and this is covered in with what we pay, so there'd be no additional cost to the upgrades. The effectiveness of the system. We will be keeping track of our successes with Flock, reporting it in quarterly reports to council. Also in our quarterly reports, we always give crime stats, and we will be able to see if there's a reduction in crime due to Flock. This will be helpful information for council when the user agreement is up in 2 years and up for renewal. The hot list. So supervisors will be the only ones approved to put in any information into a hot list. A hot list creates an event log, and the administrator can see who created it. So I can go back and look at all the hot lists to see who did that. If an item does not meet the criteria for a hot list, it could lead to revocation of the system rights and discipline. Data used by Flock to train the systems. Kristen, can you cover that part and maybe give an example of the transparency portal?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Kristen McLeod, I'm Public Affairs Manager with Flock Safety. Regarding Flock use to train our machine learning. So what that is, Flock utilizes less than 1% of data collected nationwide. That data is scrubbed of all metadata. There is no location, time, nothing associated with the still images. It's just a still image that we retain to make our system and ensure that our system is accurate in identifying vehicle details and license plates. So a great example is when a new type of vehicle comes out, the Rivians, for example, something that we had never seen before. So we're able to utilize those images to make sure that those vehicle details, those filters are accurate to provide our customers quality and accurate information. So that is what the anonymized data that we retain. But again, very important to note that we don't even know where those images are coming from. No metadata, no information is associated. It's just that still image. And then I will share my screen and provide an example of the transparency portal that the commander mentioned. And so this is, can you all see my screen okay? This is an example from Olympia. The transparency portal is Flock generated. This is public facing. It's optional and customizable for agencies, and it's updated every 24 hours. So Olympia has chosen to share an overview of what their ALPR system does. And then they include some policy information as well as some use information. On the policy side, they include what is acceptable and prohibited uses of their LPR system. And also, they make note of their hot list policy. And then you'll see here the usage information. So they've chosen to include their data retention, which is our standard default 30 days, the number of LPR cameras that are in their community. And then this is a listing of all of the agencies that they have elected to share data with. Down below, you will see some other high-level metrics, such as how many vehicles were detected by cameras in their community within the last 30 days, how many hot list hits they have received in the last 30 days, as well as how many searches the users at Olympia PD have conducted within the last 30 days. They have a link to their policy down here. And then they've also elected to utilize a feature, our public search audit. So what this is a document that, this is it right here in real time, that shows, of course, these numbers. Commander King and administrators of your system will have this exact information. So it will have for privacy purposes, this is public facing, of course, so we're not going to be sharing license plate numbers, but the police department will have access to that. The user ID is also not public. The PD will have that information, but it provides the search date and time, which camera that search was conducted on, as well as the reason why that search was conducted. So you'll see reasons given here, such as a robbery. Oftentimes agencies will require a case number to also be associated with. So a really great tool to be able to share with your community exactly how the department is utilizing the system. I can pass it back to Commander.
And then open to any further questions from council.
Are there any other questions? Or Councilmember Page?
This is for Kristen. Is it true that in New Hampshire, they have a state law that after 3 seconds, Flock has to destroy the video, and if so, how is that working out, for the law enforcement agencies? Does that get deleted on their end also, or is it just Flock that gets deleted?
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, so New Hampshire state law does have a 3-minute retention, and Flock actually doesn't have customers in New Hampshire, so I can't answer that second part of your question. But the standard data retention, the retention that the majority of our customers elect to go with is that 30-day default, though we do have agencies who have opted into a shorter data retention period. And we would honor that if that is something that Mountlake Terrace Police Department and the City of Mountlake Terrace would wish to entertain.
Well, my question is regarding the retention period. If the retention period is less than 30 days, then how does that shorter period benefit the law enforcement? Are they losing that data also?
Yes. So the 30 days provides a balance between investigative value. So oftentimes, certain crimes, there's a delay in reporting. I think some examples are a home burglary that occurs where the homeowner may not be aware, they may be on vacation, they come back, they realize that their home is burglarized. And so it provides law enforcement a buffer of time to look back at historical information for objective evidence and potential leads. Another example are sensitive cases where there may be an assault victim or a victim isn't quite ready to come forward. Different examples of where there may be a delay in reporting crime. So that 30 days provides them the ability to look back historically, but also balancing the privacy of community members. It's not stockpiling data over long periods of time. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Murray and then Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commander King. Appreciate you coming back again. Couple of questions that we haven't touched on thus far in the conversation. And the first one I think is important in kind of setting up how we got here. I guess I'm curious kind of the nexus behind us moving forward with this proposal. And, I would love you to talk about what other options are on the market that do similar things, as I think a lot of the interest that we've heard from the community, particularly that are concerned about safety, is, the desire to help you solve crimes more quickly, to be able to, especially respond to, whether missing person alerts, whether that's seniors, children, et cetera. And so I guess I would love to hear the beginning story. I don't think we've touched on that. Like, how did we get to a place where Flock is the proposal before us? And I guess I would love to hear what other options are on the market that also are ALPRs, the automatic license plate readers, and why those are not an option for Mountlake Terrace.
So we got here, other cities and agencies have started with Flock, and we started to hear some of their success stories. And there's been a few other times where either our detectives or our patrol officers were able to obtain information from other agencies that they had gotten from Flock that helped us solve a crime. So the inviting part about Flock is, with all the other agencies in our area that have it, is that we can share that information with each other. So if we have a crime that happens in Mountlake Terrace and they go through Linwood, then into Everett, and their cameras capture them. Did it turn off on me? No, sorry. Is that better? If their cameras capture them, then we have a better chance of catching up with where that vehicle's at. So that's kind of the nice part about using a system that other agencies are using around us. The other thing we looked into were a couple of the other camera systems. I think Motorola came the closest. They don't have solar abilities, and they also don't have the ability to recognize a vehicle without a plate. So if there was a car involved in a crime and they'd taken license plates off their car, it wouldn't be able to find them. So that's what led us to Flock and felt like that would be the best part for our city. As far as anything beyond LPR systems, I haven't looked much into anything besides that, except for Star Chase. I did have a meeting with the Star Chase rep, but that's sort of a different system in itself, where if we have a vehicle that's going to flee from us, it could shoot a dart at the car, and we would have GPS connected to that and be able to follow the car, which is still a pretty good system, but we'd have to be behind the vehicle, and Flock, we don't necessarily have to be there when the crime happens.
Okay, so thank you. I appreciate that understanding. And just, I guess, to restate, there are other products on the market that are ALPRs that do much of what Flock does, but don't have the integrated computer systems, which our police force is excited about, and I will say is probably where the majority of the concerns that we're hearing from our community are coming from. Does that feel fair? That
sounds fair to me. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I would love to hear how those MOUs work in practice, because it's, as somebody who's worked in operations, that feels very confusing to me. So you have, let's say Olympia's looked like maybe there was 50 agencies that they're giving permission to. So they're giving permission to those 50 agencies. So you're going to go through and put in place 50 MOUs that require each of those agencies to abide by whatever we decide is how it is okay to use our data locally. And then when they do a search in the Flock system, they're going to get access to all of the data that they have access to from all of the departments that they have agreements with, correct?
That is correct.
So how, as an officer, so you're a user, you do a search for, red car with bumper damage, and you get all of these results back, how are you going to navigate the varying MOUs for every department to ensure that that you are abiding by the MOUs that we've committed to, and also in reverse, how are we ensuring that all of those agencies are then abiding by whatever we've decided is appropriate usage based on our community's comfort?
So we would only be able to check on what's done within our system. I can't go back and look at what they're doing with their systems.
Say that again?
So I would only be able to check on what hits come through our city.
So I guess, so you do a search, you would only see what has come up on our cameras? I thought the whole point of the Flock system was that you could see.
Well, no, I thought you were talking about auditing to look at other cities.
No, I'm talking about the actual usage. So we as a community may have different usage, and I thought it was interesting because we heard from Everett and Marysville, and I looked and they have different, when you look at their public-facing accountability pages, they have different usage parameters, right? Marysville doesn't limit it in the same way that Everett has chosen to, correct? But Everett has given Marysville permission, along with other agencies, to access their data. There's not a checkpoint when you search for data, correct? You are going to get data from all of the agencies that you ultimately have access to. And so there's not a process where they then have to go, okay, for Mountlake Terrace's data, I can only use it this way. They're getting all of that. So how do you know as a searcher that you are utilizing data per our MOU agreements? And then how do we know that those folks who are out there who have access to our data are utilizing our data correctly?
I guess from an administrator's standpoint, if they're signing an MOU and they see the parameters they have to stay within our city, and if they can't abide by that, they don't sign it. They don't get our information. If we find out that they're violating it, then we would discontinue use with them. For us, when we plug in information and it goes out to their systems, we would just have to make sure within their policies or their MOU before we get that information. I guess if we get it and we don't know if it's within their policy, that's up to them to figure that out. Is that kind of?
I mean, I guess that's part of my concern, right? I don't know how you manage that, right? If you have 50 MOUs and you're getting, search results that have, let's say 30 search results that you are, scrolling through that are from multiple jurisdictions, how is an officer supposed to remember, well, this jurisdiction allows this usage and this jurisdiction allows this usage?
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be up to the officers. It would be up to the administrators who are setting those things up to make sure that we know we're going to be within their MOUs while we're doing business.
how do, again, though, like if an organization that has a different use policy than we do, so we're just not giving anyone access unless we have the exact same use policy? Because I mean, will say that's not consistent with what we're seeing with other organizations that have implemented this technology.
No, I guess I'm saying they would have to stay within ours, and if we find out that they're not while they're using it, then we would have to discontinue our.
But how would they do that?
I would just have to check and see whatever, if it's within our city, if we get a hit within our city from there, if they use that, I would just have to check on that. Kristen, I'm not sure if you have a better explanation of that.
No, I think you're spot on. So with the audit capability, anytime an external agency, say you've entered into an agreement that you trust that neighboring agency, you have they have similar policies, similar prohibited uses of the system, and they've entered into the MOU. In the audit, when they're accessing your camera's information, that is also captured. So they would have to enter in a search reason, that user, that plate number, all of that information is available in the audit. So when commander or administrators of the system are conducting those audits, that's when they would be able to further research and determine appropriate use.
That sounds incredibly complicated. I don't know how that is workable. I'll just be honest, as a user, I don't know how you manage that as a user, and I honestly don't know how you navigate that as an auditor. And so then you go to audit that outside of, I mean, when you're looking at an audit log. So I mean, one that's reactive, right? That's not like if there's problems, we are only knowing that after the problem has taken place in terms of access to information that shouldn't be accessed, correct?
Correct.
And so then even if you're looking at that audit, all you have in that audit is the user, what they searched for, and whatever reason they self-selected and put into the search field, correct?
Yeah, within our local agencies, which is who we plan to share with, I do have the ability to go into the system and look up their case numbers and their reports.
Can I ask a question about that too? Because you talked about state usage, but I was looking at the policy at least the policy that I was sent, and looking at authorized purposes, collection and use of flock safety camera data, and looking at item E, which says one of the supported uses is supporting local, state, federal, and tribal community safety departments in the identification of vehicles and/or persons associated with criminal investigations, including investigations of serial crimes. That to me does not read just folks within the state.
I can promise you it'll only be within the state. That's all we're going to allow to. I could actually change that in the policy if that's what you would feel more comfortable with.
Well, I think it's not necessarily what I feel comfortable with. I think we've heard a lot of concerns from our community in a lot of spaces, but particularly concerns about things that are happening at a federal level and the potential for data collected here in Mountlake Terrace to be misused. And so I guess like, as we are, I guess maybe like we started this conversation a couple months ago, like shared concerns, we've heard community concerns. I'm curious if we've made any adjustments to the services agreement with Flock based on the concerns that we've heard from our community.
I've had discussions with Kristen, and most of the concerns I handled with our policies.
Okay, so we haven't made changes.
Yeah, the service agreement's the service agreement. Yeah.
Kristen, a question for you. Is the service agreement, that is not a service agreement that is always the same with every organization, correct? There are definitely organizations that decide to propose changes that Flock oftentimes accepts as part of these processes, correct?
Yes, we are more than happy to work with your legal team to make to work on any adjustments there. I can't speak on our legal team's behalf, but again, we welcome conversations between your legal team and ours.
Great, okay.
And Hillary did work out all those details with them, with the agreement.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. Reviewing what we've seen for the past two demonstrations on our with the flock system. So questions are, it takes a picture of the back of the car license plate, color, make, possibly model, and it doesn't look at the driver,
That's correct.
so it doesn't identify the driver.
That's correct.
So we don't, okay. And then for transparency for the public, there is going to be a public dashboard.
Yes, there'll be the transparency portal that Kristen showed with all of the same information on it.
Good. And then this is going to be a trial. It's going to be 2 years, but you're mentioning that in the first year, if it doesn't work out, we can cancel the contract?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, once we enter into the second year, we could still cancel, but we have to finish paying for it.
Okay. And so it sounds to me like we're focusing on a crime and not a person. So
Correct.
we're looking at the car, it's being stolen, and that. Great. I wanted to just add some comments. I was researching this, and holistically in the state of Washington, I'd looked at the state first, and our state currently has 80 cities that are using this, 6 counties that are using this, and 3 tribes that are using this. And I haven't been able to find any bad information since they started using this. So that seems well for me. Then I thought, let's get closer. Let's look at Everett. Let's look at Linwood. So Everett did a presentation, and they ended up, the council unanimously voted for this. And they started the program in January of 25, and they had 63 cameras. I think we're only having 9, but Everett's a lot larger than ours. And they had 7 resulted arrests, 7 stolen vehicles with guns recovered, 4 involved confiscating large amounts of drugs. And then the flock camera system helped Everett in the fatal domestic dispute that left 2 dead and 1 injured. Officers were able to enter the license plate of the suspect, and 10 minutes later, a camera notified the officers of the location of the car, and the flock safety camera helped find Everett murder suspect. So I thought that was pretty nice. And that's coming from the Everett Post. Then I went closer to us, just a little bit north. We have Linwood. Linwood Council, on January 13th of this year, it was a unanimous vote of City Council to vote for Linwood. Linwood, besides other issues with, they have more retail than we do, there were 351 vehicle thefts the year before. That was 6.5 to 7 cars stolen a day in Linwood. So this ended up helping them a lot. So I did a little research there. In Mountlake Terrace, as of the last big data is 22 to 23, and that's the Washington State Uniform Crime Reporting Program administered by the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. So between 22 and 23 in Mountlake Terrace, we had an increase of 86.4% stolen cars. So it went from 110 stolen in 22 to 205 stolen in 23. So I think this would help with that as soon as we get it in gear here. we also had crime here in Mountlake Terrace, and the house got a car stolen, and the crime wasn't solved and the car wasn't found. It took 6 months. And I just gave you an example of how something happened in Everett, was it Everett or Linwood, and it just took 10 minutes. Now, I think that's important for people that are not necessarily in the poverty level, but they only have one car. And if it gets stolen, it's really terrible, because what if it takes 6 months to get their car back? And it's their only car. They have kids to get to school, unless it's bust. How do they get their groceries and do errands? I think this system would help those people with one car and not a lot of money to get that car back as soon as possible, and that would really help this community.
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. All right. So I know that some people are saying this is not a deterrent right now, and that's because it's brand new. But as soon as this system engages, criminals will think twice about coming through Mountlake Terrace, stolen cars, drugs, and guns. Now, the reason I really would like our city to have flock cameras is because almost all cities around us have them. And if we're the only city that doesn't have one, this would be a great place to steal a car, come through here, do crime, and sell drugs. So there'd be no deterrent except for the police we have now. So this could increase the likelihood of a deterrent for future criminals. So I think, and the last thing that I think is the most important, a few things. We want our community to be safe. And I've lived here since 1985. I feel safe. I know most of the council has stated they feel very safe in Mountlake Terrace. I think we have the best police department around. I trust them. And to do this flock camera system, I trust Mountlake Terrace Police to set up the correct policies for it, audit it, manage it, and let us know what's going on. And I trust the police department for this system. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Did you have a question? Councilmember Page?
I'm gonna kind of circle back to Councilmember Murray trying to figure out how this system works deployed. Okay, just because of listening to I think Kristen and some things that I read. So, for instance, and just let me know if I'm wrong. So, Linwood is looking for a car, a specific car, maybe one that looks like mine. All right, and so they put out an alert for, an Equinox that has these things on top of the car and, the plate number, et cetera. And that specific information. Then they put it out there as a hot list, I guess, and say Everett gets a hit, then they can go do whatever they need to do to apprehend the car. The question I'm wondering about is are there parameters that agencies or Mountlake Terrace can put into the system to say you can only, if you're looking for a car because of a robbery, et cetera, then all the other agencies have access to is what is in the system for a car for that robbery? Because Councilmember Murray talked about if you're giving access to all 50 of these different agencies, then they have access to all of our data. And I'm wondering is it all of our data, or is it just a parameter for a specific item of what they're looking for? Or can they just go in because they have access and look at anything and everything that's in our data?
Only the specific parameter.
Okay. All right.
And the only way, if we put something on the hot list, they would only see it if it went through their city and they had flock. So then it would show up.
What would what does a city have to initiate to get into our system? Something that they're specifically looking for? Or could they just, like on Tuesday, say, let's see what's in the system, let's go see what's going on with Mountlake Terrace, Linwood, and Briar, everybody else?
Are you talking about what we put into the system?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, for us, it would have to be either a crime committed, and we're able to prove that that crime in fact happened, or it would have to be a missing person or somebody endangered that's in a vehicle that's out there, and we have definitive proof that that's what we need the vehicle for.
And what is the safeguard to prevent another outside agency from looking for something in our system that they shouldn't be looking for? The big question is, will we know if someone is trying to look into our system from another agency for things they shouldn't be looking for?
I don't think they can look into our system. Am I correct with that, Kristen?
So if you grant kind of that one-to-one sharing, they can search, if Mountlake Terrace PD grants another agency access to search their cameras, but they would have to enter in a search reason. And so with that information, as Commander mentioned before, with that audit, they would be able to look to see and match that information to investigate further if it was for legitimate purposes.
Okay, so they can then, if we give them that
If
type
you
of,
give them permission.
do you see any reason why we would do that, Commander? Just give anybody just a, free for all?
If they had a legitimate reason for a crime, then sure.
But it sounds like that's something that you would do from the beginning, right? Not as a case-by-case situation, right, Kristen?
You could, or you could do that case by case.
Okay. I do have a comment, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay. The when I think of this flock, there's a few things that jump out at me, and the first thing is the fear factor. A lot of these letters here, are because of the situation. I think that the environment that we're in right now, and there's a lot of fear, and I think that a lot of folks are dismissing that fear for whatever reason. Maybe that fear doesn't belong to them. I think that I've heard since our last meeting, I've had several people say, well, if you don't do anything, you won't need to worry about being stopped. And that statement kind of infuriates me, because I think people who say that are probably people, who have never been pulled over because of the color of their skin, probably have never been followed in a store because of the clothing that they're wearing, or have the police called on them in a park because of the type of music that they're playing. Their fear, I think, is real. I talked to a couple of residents the other day, and they were concerned about going to rallies, demonstrations, for fear that they're going to be videotaped. Now, I understand that's not flock, but that's the fear that's out there, I think in the city. That's the fear that's out there in the city. I think that's what these letters are all about. Not what is yet, but perceived that could be. And because, again, of the nature of, the environment that we're in right now, I think it's something that should be recognized. I think that everyone, the deterrent part, that jumps out at me, because by definition, a deterrent is a thing that discourages or is intended to discourage someone from doing something. And a deterrent isn't really measurable, because the point of a deterrent is to keep somebody from doing something that is measurable. I think of where I live at on 228th and 66, graciously you all put officers on that corner from time to time because everybody runs the stop sign. And there's no measurement of how many people are deterred from just blasting through the stop sign because they see the officer there. We don't know their intent, but we do know how many run through it and they're there and they get stopped. So I think that the point of the flock cameras as a deterrent, I've worked in the courts way back when I was a young lad, and a lot of family members have been in law enforcement, and I've never heard of any criminal saying, yes, I knew there was going to be a witness. I knew there was going to be an opportunity for me to be seen, but I went ahead and did it anyway. I have heard a lot of times when people were sitting across from me when I was a probation officer was that if I had known that I would have got caught, I wouldn't have either done it or I would have done it somewhere else. So I think that, when we think of these cameras, just as Councilmember Ryan stated, as a deterrent, I don't know that we'll ever know how many times that a flock camera or the presence of a flock camera kept a crime from happening. All we can do is look at the numbers and maybe say that is why it happened. I think that the policies, were well thought out. I wish they had came a little bit sooner so that we could have looked at them and see where your thought was when you was putting them together, but I think they come short. And where I think they come short is that I don't like the idea of, let me take that back, it's not what I like, but what I would rather see is a advisory committee made up of city residents, yourselves, maybe city staff, that sits with you with that audit, on a quarterly basis, and not because we don't trust you, but because I think the public deserves to have an open curtain, to this audit process, to know that the things that you say are going to happen the way they're supposed to happen are happening. And we can see that our police department is being very diligent in the way that we want things done and being, forthright and all the things that, this flock system, can present for us, as well as to be able to see where the potential abuses may be and where they could be coming from. So I think that piece, if this does go forward, should be there. You had an advisory committee, I guess, in 2017, and you decided that, well, you didn't need it anymore. And I guess that's a good thing. Hopefully, if we have this flock system, the same thing will happen. But I can't help but think that in 2017, we had the same environment with the same people now that we have in 2025, but only on steroids. So maybe we should probably consider having that policy, that advisory group put back in place if we decide this, so that we can have that alliance with the community as well as with the city government to make sure that all the things that we're talking about and all the things that we're reading and hearing about, don't come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else before we go back to a person who has already spoken? Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding is that we have a lot of public comments and that we'll get to speak again after that. So I've been sitting here just listening, and it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. And for those who give us the quite a bit of feedback. I start that way because I definitely was on record saying, where are you at? And so I want to be as clear as possible. I'm very proud of this city for showing us where you're at. We had a number of folks speak up for and a number of folks against. And I will say from where I sit, this has been one of the more conflicting processes. If you're new to me, you're going to have to learn I do stories, so sit back. Firstly, I'd like to say how embarrassed I am that you've had this transparency portal on slide 9, the 2 previous slide decks, but it's only really landing today. I think that addresses a lot of what I've been hearing. Because at the end of all this, we're talking about systems. So the story that I'm giving you is, if you don't know why they call me Dr. Woodard, it's because I strongly believe in systems, to the point that I went so far as to learn one at the PhD level. Doesn't matter which one it is, because they all carry something in common, 2 things in common, actually. And we've been talking mostly about one of them, which is the safeguards, right? I've heard a lot about the safeguards, and I just want to give MLT News credit that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to trust. And I think we can be here to the end of the evening, and you're not going to somehow sway anybody from one side or the other. Best that we have is not just trust, but again, safeguards. In this particular case, it's insight. So I want to applaud our newest council member here for coming up with, if that wasn't your idea, then you can own up who it was, but bringing an idea of, well, we trust you, police department. We have systems in place where we have the public have some input or oversight. Maybe this is that time. I don't know that we have to legislate that today, but I think that that's a wonderful example of safeguards. I would point out to you the portal, if it was up on the screen like it's on mine on the laptop, is exactly that. We literally just heard you describe what you can look at. We can customize it. And let me pause and let you know that the police reports have been coming to us quarterly long before I was on this council. And what I can tell you is that in my 6 years of being on this council, it's just gotten more refined and more detailed as we as a council ask for more detail. So I applaud you for seeing that we were going to ask you for that. You took away one of my questions, which is that this will now become part of the quarterly report. We have a trespassing rule or ordinance now. We got to get the language right. In this very building. Most of you probably don't know that. You just hear me saying that now. Well, we know it because, once again, it was much like now. Should we do that? Should we not? And then what are the safeguards if we're going to do that? So we hear those reports on a quarterly basis. Again, I'm just looking at the safeguards. Now, that said, thinking about the safeguards and thinking about things that were right in my face but I missed, I did realize that I didn't ask a couple questions when I was in Japan listening in and when I was here the time before that. So no excuses, but I realized you addressed them today, but let's have you hit them directly. So if you don't mind, my first one is, and I don't know if this is for you or for you, Kristen, or for our city manager, but all 3 of you can chime in. What exactly does breach of contract look like for us? And let me use as an example and put it in context. A lot of the feedback that we've already received and that we may hear again, or that we may hear new tonight, has been talking about open court cases, which I remind you is a system. So court rulings aren't always in, and we're waiting on some of those, and I thought there were some very good points to be made. So in the spirit of we live in a country that thankfully is you're innocent until proven guilty, when those court cases are resolved, where is the breach of contract in terms of where we can be? If one of these cases is ruled and we say, wait a minute, that changes our opinion and we want out, what does that look like? Is that considered a breach of contract? And I'm just considering that as we cut the feed immediately, not in a year, not in 2 years, immediately. We as a council, I keep hearing we can do things as a council, we can do as a council. I presume that means we can say cut the feed immediately as a council as well. So is that considered breach of contract? And if so, if that's not an example, is there an example of what breach of contract looks like?
Kristen, you have a...
If Councilmember Woodward, if that were to happen, if a case ruling came about and that impacted Mountlake Terrace to a point where you did not want to utilize Flock LPR any longer, we could cut that feed immediately. We would come and get our cameras and uninstall them and be on our way.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to stay on that path. You talked about it if we went into the second year, which of course is going to come down to money, which is the refund. What happens to our balance if we, let's just keep it simple, in 6 months' time, we decide to cut the feed? What happens to the rest of the money, if you will? Then that's our way of looking at a refund.
My understanding is if it's within the first year, we finish paying for the first year. If we haven't reached the second year, if we've paid that money, we get it back, or we don't pay the second year if we've cut it before the first year is over.
Thank you. Is that what you agree to as well, Kristen?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So
Yes,
that
that's
gets
correct.
to the one that I think you should know, you don't have to believe, is reimbursement. What are you all expecting? I appreciate we'll come get our cameras, but you got to pay somebody to drive out here. You got to pay them to go up a pole, which I presume is hazardous. There's a whole lot of hidden costs. So what is your expected cost recovery if we, again, why go back to the idea of breach, if we cut ties before we hit the end of any marks?
There would not be an additional fee for us to come and collect that equipment.
Outstanding. And then my last one is, and you thought it was going to be a long story, is ongoing fees aside, are there, now let me rephrase that. In the money that we're going to pay, what's the actual, if you know this, the break-even point of our initial investment? Meaning that we're paying a lump sum for 2 years, but really, at what point have we hit the break-even? Like, is it actually 3 years? You're like, ha. Or is it more like, no, actually at the 7-month mark, you've actually got your money's worth for what you paid? Again, maybe it's not as crystal clear of a answer, but nonetheless, is there some type of ROI, or maybe that's a better language to use here? But when do you break even?
Oh, goodness. So with there are some install fees with that first year, and then the fees thereafter are $3,000 per camera per year, and really the return on investment would be
Now, don't worry, it's not a conspiracy that she lost her feed. We'll have her repeat the entire answer again. So it is a little unfortunate timing, though. All right, well, watch we get her back. Let me go to what I also want to say. I said there were a couple things that systems have in common. I said the safeguards. The other one is sacrifice, right? Because if we have a system, we're going to do it a certain way. Otherwise, we're going to do whatever we want. And if we don't get to what we want, there is some form of sacrifice in there. So I just kind of want to remind us, because I haven't heard it mentioned here. We keep focusing on that Mountlake Terrace as a specific community. Am I supposed to stop because they're
recording in progress to your police department
So bad news,
in
Kristen.
their investigations.
Bad news, Kristen. You were offline that whole time. So I'm sure it was a dynamo answer, but you were offline.
Oh, I believe it looks like
Oh, she can't
council's
even hear
muted.
us.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I am muted.
So just to jump in here real quick, when we have this issue, the audio cuts off for the folks online, and we're getting it back momentarily.
Here now.
Perfect. Kristen, can you hear us now? Yeah. So
Yes.
I'm sure that was a dynamo answer. Unfortunately, you were offline for us that whole time. So, yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah, and it couldn't have been
So,
worse because you're answering
talking
a
about
question.
return on investment.
Yes, thank you.
So many councils and police departments, our customers, look at return on investment and measure that by time savings in investigations. It's a force multiplier, stolen property that is recovered, narcotics that are seized, missing persons that are recovered. Those are all different metrics that are considered when determining return on investment.
Perfect. And I appreciate that. I didn't even think you could get that many parameters in there. I just wanted to drive home the point that this is not wasted money if we spend it now, even if we were to pay the entire time and didn't use the 2 years. So thank you for helping establish that. I had then moved on, and you're off the hook now for a moment, to just say what the other systems have in common, which is sacrifice. This team heard this. I want to make sure the online folks hear it as well, which is to say if you're going to use a system, that means you're not just getting to do what you want. If you don't get to do what you want, that is some form of sacrifice. So I'm just acknowledging that there is sacrifice in this as well. That said, what I haven't heard us talking about tonight that I really feel we need to keep in mind if there's sacrifice to be involved are our seniors and the Amber Alerts. What I will tell you from where I sit is I drive up to Everett quite a bit because I work in Everett and carry the county quite a bit. And there's rarely a time, I don't think a week has gone by that I haven't seen the silver alert up. And when I haven't seen the silver alert up, it's because it's an amber alert that's up. Rarely does it tell me how much time to get to my destination because it's too busy trying to track down our people. So just kind of recognizing that that's part of this system. That said, where I think you part ways with a lot of the feedback is around the surveillance and this idea of crime prevention. So you're wondering, man, he said it wasn't a long story. Yeah, you'd never trust me. Surveillance and crime prevention, clearly, again, trust is the issue. I shouldn't joke now. So that's where you lose us. Now, that said, I just want to remind people, in case you didn't hear, the last time this council was sitting up here together, we had our city engineer who told us that at this present time, you can tell you exactly how fast the actual speed limit is on every street because they're using your smart car data and your smartphone data. So again, surveillance, which we're concerned about, they already have that. The fact that they say they don't disaggregate it, AI can probably fix that in a minute, right? Not even a minute's time. So just kind of putting out there that we're worrying about flock, but the reality is surveillance is already around us. I was actually going to start this out by saying how the most interesting thing so far, and it isn't the most, but definitely one of the more interesting things is how many cities I've been in where this system's already in place. And when I learned it, I didn't go, oh my gosh. And since I've learned it, I haven't changed any of my behavior. So just reminding myself of like, that's interesting in and of itself, that the system is part of the milieu, if you will. But what is not is, and going back in time now, in one of those reports, and I sadly didn't have a chance to look this up, so I'm going to need your help here. But you did a report, and one of those things that we've modified is now you give us a real-world example, so it's not just graphs, pie charts, and explanations of what happened. But in one of those real-world reports, you shared with us how, and it was a corner of, I want to say, Northgate Way and 99, where you were able to track down a wanted felon. Everybody in this room would definitely agree you wanted this person off the streets. And they were able to track the person down because they were playing the same gaming system at the same corner around the same time. Does that sound familiar? If you can bring that home? Because I'm going to call it the Candy Crush case, because that's how I usually introduce it, because the game doesn't matter. It's just one of these games you were playing. This person was doing this on this corner, and we literally were able to track this person down. Which, again, is just pointing out the surveillance is out there, but I bring that case up to remind us that there was a bunch of systems that had to be activated before they could access that person's data, no matter how big of a felon that person was. Systems were in place, safeguards were in place. That person was off the street. My last one, which is just, when you cut out Kristen, I said that was an unfortunate thing because our conspiracy theorist people are going to run with that. Well, they're really going to run with this one. I'm really amazed that it hasn't come up until now that over the Memorial Day weekend, we know this, I got an email, I haven't seen it anywhere else, but over the Memorial Day weekend, I don't know if you want to take this part home, but we had a report from an eyewitness of a car on 60th Avenue West. Is this ringing a bell or not ringing a bell?
Not ringing a bell yet.
So well, that's going to surprise me when I end this story then, which is they said the driver's arm out of the window, hand up in the air.
It's ringing a bell.
Please, you want to finish that story?
Shot several rounds in the air. There was an eyewitness to it. It was, I believe it was a black sedan, and it fled the area, and we haven't been able to find it.
And the root of that story is we haven't been able to find them, right? Okay.
Correct.
Now, I don't know if you can say the flock system might have, but again, what I didn't hear was they saw a license plate, and the details that I did hear that they could remember were less. And just so everyone knows, how did you describe those shots again? What did you say it was?
Into the air.
No, how you just said, when you described it, several shots is what you said?
Several shots.
Okay. Everyone, so you know what several is? 16 casings were found. Now, I don't know what you know about physics, but what goes up must come down, which means someone indiscriminately, without concern, is that what indiscriminately means? Not concern, put 16 rounds in the air without care where that was coming down. Now, I only bring that up because that was really hard for me to ignore because I happen to know 60th Avenue well, very well, which means that's, you know, just putting that out there, that this isn't way over there, this isn't back in time. This was Memorial Day weekend, and it's hard for me not to then in this conversation about flock cameras and additional resources to not go, wow, that person's still out there. I wonder if we at least been able to check, and it's an example, would you have just checked cameras in that area, or would you have to say, I'm looking only for black sedans? Like, how would that have worked?
We would
as
have
an example?
started looking in that area.
Yeah, so all that laid out there, I can't wait to hear other folks' opinions about this, but do know that I couldn't have been more conflicted, but I also don't think I could have been more proud of this city for standing up and speaking what you have to say. We had folks who want to be on this council speaking up. We had residents who have been here a long time. We had folks who just got here. Everybody's opinion was very helpful, but at the end of it all, it's going to come down, at least for this council member, system, safeguards, and sacrifice. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll reserve my comments for the discussion once we are actually voting on the topic. But I did have one other question for Kristen, if you would. I asked a question last time you were here, and you gave a response that I had a chance to take a look at and didn't necessarily see. So I was hoping you could clarify for me. So I had expressed concern because some of the concern is with improper usage of authorized users, but there is also a lot of concern with Flock's usage of the data. And you talked about the data that you utilize that's where it's stripped of identifying markers, but then there's another provision as part of our terms of agreement that's proposed as part of this, part of what we're voting on tonight, and it was the disclosure of footage. And I read this last time, but I'll read it again because we've got a lot of folks here who weren't here last time. So it's 5.3 in the service agreement, disclosure of footage. Subject to and during the retention period, Flock may access, use, preserve, and or disclose the footage to law enforcement authorities, government officials, and or third parties if legally required to do so, or if Flock has a good faith effort or good faith belief that such access, use, preservation, or disclosure is reasonably necessary to comply with a legal process, enforce this agreement, or detect, prevent, or otherwise address security, privacy, fraud, or technical issues or emergency situations. And I commented on the broadness of that provision and asked about how that would work. And you indicated that if someone were to come to us or come to you and wanted data from Mountlake Terrace, that you would check in with us and that sort of thing. But I don't see that laid out in the agreement. And I guess I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing it somewhere, that that is part of the agreement, and I just didn't see it.
And that would only be in the event of a court order or subpoena. And then I'm not sure if maybe the city attorney would like to address that specifically also, maybe shed some light on that or clarify.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And any records in our possession or in Flock's possession would be court ordered to be turned over. But short of a court order or some sort of legal mandate, we would adhere to our policies, which would prohibit us from disclosing records pursuant to a request from another agency who may or may not be using them in conjunction with ICE.
Sorry, I guess, let me clarify and maybe go back to you, Hillary. So my question actually was about Flock's usage of our data, not necessarily usage amongst authorized, individuals here at the city or at other jurisdictions. And so again, I'm looking at 5.3 in the service agreement, which to me doesn't read that a court subpoena or any sort of formal legal process is required. It says that if they have any good faith belief that, that data would help in a variety of different instances, both for their own use or others, that they can access that data. I was gonna say, So I guess to make sure we're talking about the same thing, are you saying that that would require a court order? That Flock's access to our
Flock
data?
can use the data while it's retained, right? It has it for 30 days. It can access it. I mean, I would assume that Flock is accessing it internally for quality control. No?
No, Flock will not access your data without your express permission to do so. And that event would be to provide customer service, but you would be with us during that access. Flock will not access your information.
Kristen,
Okay.
where does it say
So-
that?
I was going to say perhaps, Aaron, you know, an amendment to the contract might be useful, or just some sort of written acknowledgement that that's the case.
I mean, I will name, I think a lot of things would be useful. I think there are concerns that I have brought up and others have brought up throughout the process. I guess I'm a little surprised that we're again at a place where we're scheduled to vote on this, and some of these concerns haven't been addressed in any way, let alone a meaningful way. And so, yes, I do think that if that is not a required clause as part of the contract, it absolutely should have been amended. You know, I think that just speaks to how premature this vote feels in terms of you know, there are still so many questions and so many concerns that I appreciate staff trying to address, but I don't think we have addressed many of them outside of speaking on them in a way that is, you know, I think consistent with Flock's marketing and sales pitch versus actual, like, contractual contracts. I was gonna say trust doesn't go far when you are in a court. I love the idea of trust, and we have a high degree of trust in our police force, and that was clear in all of the comments, whether or not they supported us moving forward with this tool. But trust at the end of the day is not, I guess, Hillary, I would assume that your legal guidance in general is not to rely on trust, but to ensure that there is clarity, and it's written clarity whenever we're making decisions on the city's behalf.
Yeah, and I mean, I take my marching orders from you all. That clause didn't concern me because I have, you know, I have fewer concerns than you're voicing, Councilmember, about the end user. But if that's the direction council wants to provide to us, we can certainly go back to the drawing board and renegotiate.
Great, thank you both, appreciate it. No more questions, Mayor, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands coming up. Should we, Mayor?
So, Mayor, I think at this point we can go to public comment. I would like to note that there are 14 folks who have signed up for public comment at 5 minutes each. That's over an hour. And plus other folks who may want to comment following, you know, what they hear. I would suggest that you limit public comment from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, and that we request that the same talking points or the same points by each commenter aren't repeated. Just, you know, I agree with this this comment to cut down on the time frame. But we can move to public comment at this point if council likes, or take a 5-minute break.
Do I ask everyone if they?
5-minute break.
Yeah, you want to take the 5-minute break now before we decide on?
No, we can decide, but he also said if we want to
Yes,
break.
yes, I will have that.
Okay.
So, does everybody want to change the 5 minutes to 3 minutes? And do I ask for a vote? And I'm going to ask for the vote.
Make a motion that we go from 5 minutes.
Can you make that motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to limit public comment to 3 minutes.
Second.
Is it moved and seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so public comments will be 3 minutes per person. And we'll take a 5-minute break right now.
We will, I'm sorry?
Do we,
I was just saying, just to respect everybody's time, I could go without a break.
Fine with me. Just a suggestion.
yeah. So, do we want to take that break?
3-minute break.
We'll do a 3-minute break.
Okay, so we'll be back at 8:30.
All right, we're back in session. And now we're going to go on to public comments, right? And so Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to open public comment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to open public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public comment is now open. City Clerk, do we have any?
Oh, yes. Our first commenter is Steve Mossman. You'll have 3 minutes at the podium.
Good evening. Thank you, Council. Very often we hear government leaders and citizens use terms of support for our police services indicating that they are always on the side of public safety and cracking down on crime and lawlessness. But when a new technology is developed that could significantly increase the effectiveness of our police force, cries of invasion of privacy, potential misuse for nefarious reasons, or it just costs too much, are cries that negate the words of support that we have heard just days in the past. I would hope that our leaders will stand in support of our new law enforcement, to use new technology whenever it becomes possible. I would also like to address some of the issues I have heard raised both in public comment and by council members concerning the implementation of the flock system. Number one, the idea of loss of privacy. First and foremost, there is no expectation of privacy when you are in public. This has been covered by numerous Supreme Court decisions for decades. If you are outside your home or in otherwise secluded areas, you are open to public scrutiny. Being filmed either by private or public entities is not only legal, it should be expected. Number two, license plates are already a matter of public record. That is why they are placed on the exterior of vehicles. They are used as proof of eligibility to be on public roads, as well as identifying information in cases of illegal activities. If there is no questionable activity, there is no need for retention or use of the collected information. Number three, this type of system can be used for tracking purposes this type of system can be used for tracking of innocent citizens. This concern is without merit. As described by the suppliers, the system is only looking for information that has been legally determined to be useful for investigating and solving criminal activity or for public safety. Lastly, the idea that we cannot trust other jurisdictions to correctly use the information that has been collected by our police department. If we were to accept the premise of this statement, it would mean that we could no longer rely on other city police departments or they on ours for help in apprehending wanted lawbreakers. Interdepartmental cooperation has to be the rule, not the exception. We cannot believe that lawbreakers only work or remain in a single community. It is more reasonable to assume that most crime is committed away from the area in which perpetrators reside. Sharing information between departments has and always must be necessary for the rule of law to remain intact. The implementation of the flock system will provide the police department of Mountlake Terrace with another tool to help keep the citizens of our town safe from growing levels of criminal activity that is happening all around the region. I implore the members of the council to approve the installation and use of the flock camera system. And just as a little note about trying to find this, an incident happened to me a number of years ago that was similar to what was described by Mr. Woodard, in that a bullet came down in the back window of our car just inches away from where my grandchild was going to be seated not much later.
Next is George Stanton. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I have been a Mountlake Terrace resident since 2018. I live here with my wife and my 9-month-old son. Been a Washington resident my whole life. You know, I am deeply, deeply concerned about this software, and I believe that the costs outweigh the benefits. Let's be clear about what this is doing. This is tracking every single vehicle that passes by one of these cameras. It is not tracking lawbreakers or people who have committed some sort of crime. It is for 30 days capturing every single license plate that passes by that vehicle. That means it's tracking people. And I know that Flock will say it's just doing the license plates, but if you think about how people get around, we are blessed to live in a community where you don't have to own a car, but I will tell you that the vast majority of people do every single day all of their travel via car. So we are effectively tracking people through this. And furthermore, Flock's next generation product is called Nova, which explicitly tracks people. And so we are getting into this track where not only are we doing vehicles first, we're then setting ourselves up to potentially marry that in the future. I know that maybe that's not on our roadmap, but that is the company's intention. Flock says that it deletes data after 30 days, but as we know, that data can be subpoenaed. It can be seen by other agencies which may not have the same standards that we have, and we're only going to find out about that after the fact, as we heard tonight. It can be released via a hack. We know that basically every large company in the United States has been hacked, and let's not pretend like this isn't extremely valuable data, and it will be hacked at some point. We also know that this data has been shared with ICE over 4,000 times. It has been used in Texas to track a woman who was seeking an abortion. It is being misused, and we can hope that that is not the case in our community, but once a database like this has been built, you cannot go back. It will be publicly, or it will be available. It is susceptible. Flock has made a lot of, one other thing I want to address is that just kind of Flock as an organization, Flock has sued open source researchers attempting to map communities which have adopted Flock. They were going to use stolen dark web data until public outcry forced them to reverse that decision. They have a claim in the marketing slide that we saw that Flock has solved 10% in the crimes, 10% of crimes in the United States. But the researcher overseeing that study has come out and said that that is not valid and it is not statistically significant and disavows that data. They have refused external security testing, which is something that Motorola, another company that we were seeing, was going to consider. And so we just don't know how safe that data is. I have more to say. I wish I had 5 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Next is Chris Finch. You'll have 3 minutes at the podium.
I'll keep it short, just because it's in the interest of time. I too am nervous about the whole system. I would encourage the council to vote no, or at least postpone it. If we're not ready, we're not ready. It's okay. We don't have to vote on it tonight. But Councilman Ryan, I think that that's a false sense of security. You think that it's going to deter crime. There's no studies that really validate that it deters any crime. Councilmember Page, I think the phrase you were looking for is if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. I think that is a phrase that was coined in the 1940s in Germany, and we all know how that turned out. It's not a good thing, and it can always be used for bad things. I think there's much more to be said. I brought a whole bunch of talking points, but I guess everybody's on the idea that I don't think it's a good thing for us to rush into. So I'll yield back to everyone else.
Next is Alvaro Guillen. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Matsumoto and council members. My name is Alvaro Guillen, and I am a resident of Mountlake Terrace for 20 years. I'm here today to strongly oppose the use of Flock surveillance cameras in our city. I want a safer city as much as you do, but not at the cost of our personal freedom. A flock presentation is a sales pitch trying to get you excited about the product and buy it. As such, these presentations don't mention the serious concerns that have been raised and reported widely about these surveillance cameras and how other cities have pushed back after seeing Flock's dangers. A Forbes report found that Flock routinely handpicked and oversimplified data to support its crime-cutting claims. Our community is already living in fear, and if you go tomorrow to a peaceful protest, people around you will tell you to turn off your phones out of fear of the law enforcement spinning your phones. I'm not talking about immigrants who are already living in greater fear. I'm talking about US citizens like myself that have to carry a copy of my passport with me all the time. These cameras disproportionately harm immigrants and communities of color, posing a higher risk for them and amplifying existing biases in policing. Flock cameras are a dangerous expansion of government surveillance. As the McIver Institute, a Wisconsin-based think tank promoting individual freedoms, warns, Flock's cameras create a mass surveillance system that tracks every driver's movements, turning innocent errands into permanent records for police to mine. The surveillance system can be easily abused and become a constant monitoring of city residents without any probable cause, the very conditions for which the Fourth Amendment was created. The system stores footage for too long, and I worry that the data could be shared with outside law enforcement agencies. Once they are installed in our city, mass surveillance will be normalized, eroding the privacy of all Mountlake Terrace residents. The cameras do not make us safer. Police will only be using the cameras after a crime has been committed, not preventing the crime. These cameras criminalize everyday life. We should invest in real safety solutions, not invasive tracking. We deserve a city that respects civil liberties, not one that partners with a company that have been reportedly breaking the laws, installing cameras without permits, and is not transparent on their crime-cutting claims. Please do not turn our streets into a surveillance city. I urge you to reject Flock's surveillance cameras. Thank you.
Next is Elizabeth McIntosh. You'll have 3 minutes at the podium.
Good evening. Thank you, Council and Mayor. My family's been in Mountlake Terrace since the 60s. I myself coming along in the mid-90s. Lifelong resident Mountlake Terrace. I have concerns about it being used as a deterrent versus preventative measures. And I just wonder how you will stop personal bias from influencing misuse of the system. Also, it made me think, general trust versus written agreement and prevention of misuse of the system is really a strong theme for me to be considered here. I have concerns about identification of a suspect versus multiple people using the same car and how law enforcement would be making that determination. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's the right choice. And then tracking each and every plate, and if Flock or their employees may be tempted or work with ICE to target people or arrest people to meet quotas based on personal and racial bias. I yield my time.
Next is Laura Winkler. You have 3 minutes at the podium.
Hi. So I've been here since 2013, and I think it's a great town. And the police department has been good, and the council good. However, the state of the country we're living in right now is not good. It reminds me of Germany in the 1930s. We have a fascist government now that cannot be trusted, and it's only a matter of time before they put pressure on our state and our city to comply with their racial bias and immigration laws or policies. So even though we have a good policy and we're supportive of people in our little town, there's mass room for abuse in this flock system and for people to get data that should not have it. This already happened with Doge. And so I oppose it. I think it's a bad idea, and I think we should focus on preventing crime and thinking about why crime is happening in the first place and why people are using drugs. Addiction is a disease, not necessarily a crime. And so we should be supporting people and having social programs to encourage people not to use in the first place. So the flock system is not an appropriate surveillance system for our little town. Thanks.
Next is Dustin DeCook. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I've been a Mountlake Terrace resident for 18 years, and I'm going to talk fast because I have 5 minutes of content here. All right, this decision is not just about cameras. It's about the long-term direction we choose as a city. We are living in uncertain and politically volatile times. Once surveillance infrastructure like this is installed, it doesn't stay small or local. It scales, it expands, and as previous commenter mentioned, that's Flock's intent. And it becomes incredibly difficult to dismantle. And as Councilmember Murray pointed out, Section 5.3 of that contract gives Flock the power to share footage or data with outside government agencies or third parties, potentially even without a formal warrant or subpoena in hand, if they simply believe that it's needed. This undermines local control and exposes our community to unknown risks. While the draft policy manual in the back of the room places restraints on the use of that data by our police department, it's not clear that all those same restraints apply to Flock employees from a contractual or legal standpoint, or public records requests, or nearby agencies that have access to our data. Just because dozens of other agencies in the Puget Sound region have signed contracts with Flock doesn't mean that Mountlake Terrace should. We do have a great police department, and we do trust them, as council members Ryan and others stated. But you're asking us not to only trust officers, our officers, you're asking us to also trust Everett officers, Olympia's officers, Flock employees, and so many others. You're being asked to approve a system that could compromise the privacy and safety of your most vulnerable constituents, immigrants, women, protesters, and anyone considered other by those in power. Even if you trust today's leadership, we cannot predict who will control these tools tomorrow. If we've learned anything over the past 6 months, it's that someone must be willing to act as a check on unrestrained power. And I hope tonight that someone is the 7 of you. So yes, this is only a trial for 2 years. But are you comfortable with right now being those 2 years, with what we're seeing going on around us, with the daily erosion of our civil rights and trampling of the Constitution? You want to try this out now? So I ask you plainly, please vote no.
David Mercer, you have 3 minutes.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Bonnie and I moved to Mountlake Terrace in 1977. During this time, we have been involved in the city. I was involved with helping put some of these people on the council. Back then, and I haven't been to a council meeting in quite a while, but what I'm seeing here is common sense. This shouldn't be an issue. I would look to find out a little bit more about this camera system. I called the past city manager of Mountlake Terrace down in Lakewood. Lakewood's got one. And he said once they installed it, crime went down. He goes, people stay out of Lakewood now if they've got a stolen vehicle. We have a friend that had a home invasion. They held pistols at their kids' heads trying to steal what they could. They stole their car. They called in, let the police department know that their car was stolen, and it took weeks for them to find these people. They could have probably caught them before they left town. So what I'm asking is this council to start using some common sense, and this what if is total bull. Other cities around this area have these cameras. Why isn't Mountlake Terrace up to date with it? And they're trying the police department. The dealings I've had with Mountlake Terrace Police Department have been great. We had a man die in my house Christmas Eve. Got home and they were there. Who are you people going to call? All of the rest of you out here. Who are you going to call when something goes wrong? You're going to call the police department, but yet you don't want to support them. I'm having a real issue with this. So, council, when it comes time, vote to help your police department out. I was a contractor for 35 years, and if I needed a tool, I bought that tool because, number one, it helped my guys do the job. They did it right, and they did it efficiently. And that's what these cameras are going to do for our police department. Thank you.
Next is Blake Severns. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, Blake Severns. Been living here since 2015. Steve, you did make a good point. We all carry these things around. We all are being tracked. That is very true. Although, this is my choice. I can turn it off and I can leave it. I have to leave my house. I'm a history teacher, so making it quick, this sounds a little like 1984. It's a step, public government surveillance. That concerns me. I heard they're really popular in Texas. I don't want to live in Texas. And I don't normally quote Elon Musk. I'm going to quote Elon Musk in the election when he said, I don't trust computer programmers because one line of code can change everything. And I don't know who these people in Flock are. Our police officers are great, you're right, but we support our police officers. I'm not concerned about Mountlake Terrace police officers. I am concerned about someone like the person I just quoted having free access to systems like this. And that is my concern, so thank you.
Next is Victor Eskenazi, 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. First, I am against the surveillance. I've heard common sense. Well, common sense varies depending on the person. Everyone has their own common sense. Safety, I thought I heard several council members mention that they do feel safe here. How safe is safe? Several weeks ago, I heard a report on crime the past several years. Yes, you could find individual crimes that are horrendous. You're always going to find that. The question is, what price are we going to pay, is everyone else going to pay, to try to eliminate one or two crimes, which we abhor? That's the question. As was pointed out, laws do change, and whether you agree with the current administration or disagree, we've all seen how this country's laws and everything has changed overnight. So even if Flock does a great job, right now, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the day after. But once those cameras are there, they're there. Yes, they only capture a static image of the license plate and the car, but There's so much surveillance currently. That's plenty. That adds with everything else, and everybody is monitored, period. Question, what is freedom? We just had we're going to be commemorating Juneteenth about the freedom of slavery, black slaves specifically. How much more are we all being enslaved by this technology, by more and more and more surveillance? If you want to go, as I was mentioning, you want to go to a protest, this just adds to that you're being followed. And if someone doesn't like what you say, well, we know you're now suddenly a criminal. So what's a crime? It varies, it depends. So please, my common sense is please allow us some freedom that we don't need constant surveillance to be safe. That comes more with people working together, as this council has been working to try to get community involvement, to get our community to work together and support and work with the council and work together. That is much more important for safety than spending money on more surveillance. Thank you.
Lee Gresco, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you all. Good to see you. I agree with the folks who feel surveillance, we're overly surveilled. And I've kind of been watching this since I moved here in '83, when the thumbprint on a driver's license was proposed. And, and I thought, oh, this sounds really bad. And anyway, it has never been dropped as an issue. So we've just gotten more thumbprints on things. Just a little idea on surveillance and how it goes back, just a little refresher. If you already got your real ID, anybody in here got that already? If you did it, that's an idea conjured up as a result of the Patriot Act. And that was that was a law that got passed in 2001. George Bush signed that into law. And there was a reason for that, because the Twin Towers were bombed and the Pentagon had a plane run into it, things like that. The problem with the Patriot Act and the Real ID is that every state is going to have their Department of Motor Vehicles, DMVs, tied up with Homeland Security. That is an ultimate goal of this country. We have all kinds of information on our driver's licenses now. You don't have to get the little star and so forth to have that real ID. You can always get a passport, just to prove who you are, or carry it around with you, like that fellow said. So I talked to a friend the other day, and we were talking about the Patriot Act, and she thought it was like, yeah, citizen, patriot. But Patriot actually stands for providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. So that's Patriot. And we have just continued to have more and more surveillance. I'm against surveillance. I think we have a fine police department. And I think I would like to see more neighborhood policing. And I hope they keep up the good work. And I'm just not a surveillance person, so thank you for listening.
Isaac Harrison, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Council. I submitted a letter. I'll just say I am opposed to additional surveillance, but I wasn't planning on speaking, so I'll just leave it with that and just say, yeah, I absolutely agree with some of the comments that were made here. I think
our most vulnerable communities right now, especially our undocumented neighbors, our neighbors whose citizenship is in a sort of limbo due to political manifestations outside of our control here in this city. They are particularly at risk, and I always think it's a good policy to protect those who are the most vulnerable rather than those who are the least in need of protection. Thank you.
Next is Sam Doyle. You'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, council members and mayor. First of all, I'm really encouraged that so many of our neighbors have shown up tonight because it shows that we all care so much about our community's safety. We share this common value, and I would encourage us to remember that, even though clearly our opinions and our perspectives differ. I'm going to cut this down because a lot of people have already stated these points clearly. I stand in opposition to this for several reasons. FLOC and the Department of Homeland Security are already data sharing. The mechanics, the semantics of how this happened is somewhat irrelevant for my point, because the point is that it is happening. If you choose to support this company, this FLOC company, you are supporting the persecution of undocumented people in this country. Giving them money, even if they don't use it to track people in our city, supports a system that does persecute undocumented people and also breaches our Fourth Amendment rights against search without a warrant. It was also mentioned in the last meeting and today that Edmonds, Linwood, Everett are using this network. This is true, but a reminder, Mountlake Terrace can be different. Mountlake Terrace can be better. We can take a proactive approach to community safety instead of a reactive one. Auditing data is not helpful in hindsight. If an officer misuses their capability to search, we don't know that until after the fact. The damage is done, the trust is lost already. Never mind the financial cost and guaranteed legal ramifications of purchasing this system. Look at the current case in Virginia, it's still ongoing. The risks of the system are too great, especially for our most vulnerable populations. This $60,000 can be much better spent on other ways of increasing community safety, not increasing the likelihood of the city being sued and putting our undocumented people and others at risk. Please vote no. End of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sophia Engelmeyer. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello. Hello, City Council, Commander, Police Chief, friends, and neighbors. Thank you for giving me a chance to listen in and speak tonight. As an immigrant, a naturalized citizen, and a grad student who has some opinions that differ from what the current government is in favor of, I urge that we vote no, or at the very least, postpone the vote until we can work out more of the nuance. Others more eloquent than I am have already brought up almost all the points I want to make. So I'm basically just showing up to add my voice to the chorus. I do know how useful cameras could be in law enforcement. I came from a country that relies on it to solve most of its crimes. But recent events here in the States across the country have shown us that these camera footage and data could very easily be misused. As others have said, we trust our police, we trust our Mountlake Terrace police. Thank you so much for being there, for keeping our community safe. But I personally do have concern about other jurisdictions and even federal overreach. As others have mentioned, the threat to reproduction rights is happening in other states. Threat to immigration rights is happening across the country. From my current understanding, this system seems to rely a lot on trust. Trust that the federal powers that be would not one day grant ICE legal direct access. And of course, they're already accessing it indirectly. Trust that other departments will follow our city's restrictions. And trust that other inquirers will not frame their reason for searching in a dishonest manner, etc. Like others said, the potential danger is once we hand over this information, sure, we can cut the feed, but the data may already be collected and uploaded, and whoever may use it may have already used it. FLOC has also shown ambition to expand, as others have said. It seems to want to go from license plate recognition to facial or other detail recognition, to go from license plate to individual to people. I'm also concerned about, this is mentioned in the agreement or terms of use, there will be using the footage for AI recognition training. And that's another can of worms. Of course, they say they will anonymize it, but who will be regulating what or to what extent it is anonymized? And our current legislation is still working to catch up on AI laws and stuff. So to sum up, until our legislation catches up and could place more nuanced safeguards against misuse, I believe it is in our best interest to not adopt the system and plant further fear and self-censorship into our hearts. There must be a better way or other ways to use this fund that we are going to give to FLOC to make our city a better place, without using FLOC or other license recognition system. Please consider. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to close public comment.
It's a move, seconded to close public comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Public comment is now closed. What are the? Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to sign the agreement in FLOC safety systems.
Second.
Now we have discussion. Are there any discussions? Councilmember Sonmore?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedule to attend this meeting tonight. I know everybody has an opinion and everybody has a right to say what they feel, so I hope we're all respectful here. I have heard and read everything that you have written. I know we've talked about our background, so I'll just bring it up. Being a law and justice major, I studied crimes for about 4 years, and crimes are not going away. In fact, we're going to have more. With more people, you have more crimes. Being on the council for 25 years, I've had people, neighbors, come to me and say, Laura, my house has been robbed. What are you going to do about it? Laura, I've been held at gunpoint, like we just heard about with a neighbor. They left the cell phone. The person that held them at gunpoint left their cell phone in the home, but the police had their hands tied, the way I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because we had to protect that criminal. So that family continued to live in fear for 6 months until they found out who had held them at gunpoint. I've heard there's drug houses in our area. My car was stolen. I've read about the catalytic converters being stolen out the light rail. Light rail crimes are going to increase. It's just data and statistics. Yes, deterrent is interpreted by different people different ways. When I was growing up, I did something wrong. My father deterred me from never doing it again. And I learned that way. I would love to be able to not have cameras because I'd like people not to do crimes. I'd like to be people to be held accountable for their crimes, but that's not always going to happen. Crimes are going to be happening. It's been happening for beyond we can even imagine. But I am in support of the cameras, I will tell you right now, because first and foremost, as a council member, my priority is to keep our community safe and our well-being. How am I going to protect each and every one of you? When you leave this room, I have no other option to give you than these cameras. One of you may be robbed, and I know I've interviewed a sheriff, I've interviewed a city manager, and I know you're shaking your head, but I do have an opinion too, and I have done my research just like you have. But I believe that we need to at least have another tool in our toolbox to help our police catch people. We have gone around from ICE. We're talking about a whole lot of different things. If an immigrant's family was held at gunpoint, I'd want that crime solved. I'm not talking about excluding immigrants. I don't think that that's where this conversation should go. I do know that your cell phone, yes, it is a right, or you cannot have your cell phone, but are you turning it off? Do you know how your cell phone listens to you? Do you know how to go in there and turn it off? Because your conversations are being collected. Do you know about our satellites, that they can look at a dime on a table? They have tons of information. You go to Linwood, you go to Linwood and you get a red light ticket. They get your picture, your license, they get your address. You have to pay them. So they're collecting all this information. We studied that in Mountlake Terrace years ago, understanding what information is being collected. I can tell you your information is being collected in a lot of different ways you don't even know of. And you go, I know everybody has their different opinion about that, but I believe a lot of information is being collected here. My issue here is, how do I keep you safe? How do I understand to give the police another item that they can help you? I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want anybody to talk about immigration, because I don't feel like that's what we're talking about here. We're just trying to find people that are doing crimes. I think about the 3 little girls that were murdered. They were murdered. The mother's talking about having an Amber Alert. Maybe if there were cameras, I know the truck has been found and all of that. I think about the senior citizen that's lost. I think about a child that's lost. This is not funny. It's crime. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I see about cars getting stolen. I see about shootings. And right now, how I feel and the data I've read and the people I've talked to, and please know that your opinions do matter. And this is a pilot, and that's why I'm comfortable right now doing this. We can quit after 1 year, but I need a tool that I can go back to these residents over the years who said, I need help. And this is the way I feel I can help them, is because I care. I care about each and every one of you, and I do not want to see anybody go through a crime. And it's a horrific thing to go through something like that. And this is something that I think that can help the police. And I do want to support our police. And so I thank you for your time. I thank you for listening to me. And I thank you for being here tonight.
Anyone else? Shall we go on for the vote? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. I will start with gratitude as well. I know that's already been shared, but as somebody who dreamed of this kind of civic engagement when I ran for office, it matters that you're here and you are showing up. And I hope that the council hears folks, because we heard from a lot of folks and we heard a lot of concerns, but I'm grateful you showed up. And there are people who I respect and care about in this community who came and shared differences of opinion. That is a healthy part of this process, right? We bring forward ideas, we learn more about them, we discuss, we debate, and then we decide how we're going to move forward as a community. Clearly, there is a strong sense, a shared sense of wanting to be safe as a community, right? That is something we heard from every single person, whether or not you agree with what's proposed tonight. Folks want to be safe, and there is a lot of respect and trust for our police department. And that is incredibly important. I have a lot of respect and trust for our police department, and my concerns about this product are not based on my belief in how our police department is capable of doing their jobs. I think anybody who's a regular watcher, all 5 of you, has heard me routinely praise our police department for their work, particularly their community-oriented policing work, and I have applauded them for utilizing technology to serve our community more effectively time and time again. But I think particularly as somebody who spent a significant portion of my career working at technology companies, I also know the power of technology to potentially be misused. And we heard that a lot from our residents. I think when we think about safety, our community generally feels safe. So this is something that it wasn't part of our work plan for the year, wasn't part of our budget for the year, kind of came out of left field, and at least the sense I get is like, other folks are doing it, so we should do it too. Which I think is an interesting perspective. So I wanted to understand more about why other jurisdictions had moved forward with this, because it's been a fairly rapid adoption process, which is interesting. And so did some research, and one of the things that I found, which I thought was interesting, one, I will say the vast majority of Washington jurisdictions do not use flock. Yes, there are many that do, but the vast majority do not. So we are not alone if we choose to not move forward tonight. I think a really important thing to note is that the Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority issued approximately $2.7 million in grants last year to 45 different agencies. And the vast majority of those funds went to purchase flock tools. So many jurisdictions were presented with the option they're like, hey, we've got this grant, you can get this tool. They're also doing pilots, but we haven't seen the results of those pilots. Many of them haven't even started, and the ones that have started are very new. So I think understanding the implications, I think it's hard to say the potential for misuse because we haven't had the opportunity to see it yet. I think there is more and more concern every day about whether or not the rule of law and checks and balances in our country are being followed, which I think is why there is such a significant shift in public concern. Talking to colleagues who approved this 6 months ago or a year ago, their communities didn't show up with concern. Clearly, our community feels differently and has shown up with concern. Gig Harbor looked at a proposal to move forward with flock here at the end of March. They had even received one of those grants to where it would cost them nothing to move forward with, and their community came out much the way ours has, and ultimately they decided to vote that proposal down. They decided to, reject those funds that they had, and even for free, they decided that they did not feel like that was the right tool for their community because they listened to the folks that had shown up and shared concerns. And I think that's important to note. We would not be unique if we decide that this is not the right tool for us. And there are other examples. Denver had been using the product and also decided that they were not going to continue to move forward with it because they are also hearing the same concerns for their community that we are hearing tonight. We have spent, so I think we've talked a lot about trust, right? We've heard particularly from folks that advocate for us to move forward with this. They've talked a lot about trusting, users of the system, trusting flock. I think one of the most important aspects of community safety is our community members trusting law enforcement. And our law enforcement team has done a phenomenal job in building and growing that trust, even during turbulent times. I've been on the council 5.5 years. I came on in 2020. That was a challenging time for law enforcement across the nation. Our police force met our community in a way that they heard them, they listened to them, and they were responsive to their concerns. My concern is we have not done that here. We have had significant pushback from our community. Significant. Honestly, the amount of pushback we've had tonight probably is more than the entire public comment I've received in 5.5 years on the council. That says something. If we are not, this is not something we have to move forward with tonight. This is not it's not a one-time offer. If we say no, not now, that doesn't mean we can't reconsider it. It doesn't mean we can't have additional community conversations. I am fully supportive. Look, 70% of our community has indicated, based on our community surveys, that they feel their safety is good or excellent. So there's opportunity. It is good. We live in a very safe community, but there's still opportunity. And I would welcome the chance. If we've got $54,000 that we can find in the budget, I will say I walked away from our last annual police report. I think what I shared as far as feedback with our team goes, based on the data they shared, was that it was unfortunate that the places in our community where folks probably felt the least safe was in their homes, because we saw domestic violence on the rise, and on the roads because we saw DUIs up substantially. I think if we do have extra funds and we want to talk about proactively addressing safety, maybe we should be talking about additional patrols. We learned that one of the reasons we saw those DUI numbers go up is because we had more patrol officers on the street, which ultimately resulted in more of those folks not continuing to drive through our community. We also heard that we made one of our ARPA contributions, the American Rescue Act funds, to there's only one place in Snohomish County that takes domestic violence victims, and they don't have any space. So oftentimes victims of domestic violence stay in situations that are awful because they don't have other options. You know, and I think then the other place that we've had a lot of conversations about safety in recent times is youth safety. I know one of the things we've talked about and I've been advocating for is more youth programming. We used to have a program in the 90s that would help to keep youth engaged and safe. We haven't had resources to do that. I would argue that there's a lot of opportunities to spend money in our community that may result in a net more positive impact on safety if we really do have those funds, and that's what we want to do. I think we did hear from folks concerns about funds, though. I will just name we are spending more money than we are bringing in this year. We are in the process of convening a fiscal sustainability task force to give us guidance around where we want to look at potentially raising additional revenue, how to do that, or where to cut, because the reality is we don't just have $54,000 laying around. These funds are going to come from somewhere else, and I think that is an important consideration as well. I guess I would just close with, I think we have done so much positive work in recent years, and I hear again and again, and we just finished interviews with folks who are interested in serving on our boards and commissions, which every year that I've been on council, we've had more and more folks raise their hands and more phenomenal folks raise their hands. We have great people in this community who are interested in serving because we have cultivated really positive relationships with our community. Part of that is listening, and part of that is hearing. If we do not listen and hear people tonight, that there are significant concerns, and we just move forward without at least working to address those, which again, these are not new concerns. You've been hearing concerns over the last 2 months. There have been no changes to the proposal that is before us. I think that would be very short-sighted to move this forward. I think it could be no, period. It is a no period for me. I will just name that. But I think it could also be a no right now. We heard that from lots of folks. Look at what's going on. Maybe we wait a year and see what happens with the federal government. Maybe things aren't as bad as people are concerned about. Maybe they are. Maybe we see how some of these pilots in our neighboring communities work out. Maybe we see how our budget situation works out. I think there is a lot of reasons to pause here. And that is, at a minimum, this is something we should table for the foreseeable future or until a date to be determined. So, I know I've talked a lot on this, but I really think it is important that we hear our community. I learned a ton. I learned a lot around, I thought I had done my research, and I still learned more reasons why folks have concerns. And I think it is really, really important that we hear them. I think I would just close with somewhere in my notes, because there's a lot of them at this point. So our police department goal is to be regional leaders and set the example for modern policing as it relates to community expectations. We are not followers, we are leaders in Mountlake Terrace. We have established a community that people say feels different. I think it is important that we are different, that we respect that our police operate in a modern way, and that we hear our community and their expectations, and they have told us firmly that they do not want us to move forward with this. I hear the people who think we should move forward with this. A lot of the things that you brought forward, we should work on. We should talk about that. Like, what are other ways that we can address the community's concerns without also creating a whole host of new concerns? So I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation, and I am hopeful that our council decides to lean into our goals and to hear our community.
Councilmember Salmore.
If there's one thing I want you to take away tonight is the feeling of being safe. My spouse oversees 100 officers, and please do not feel like you're always safe. That's a misnomer. When you make yourself feel safe, you become less inattentive and more acceptable to crimes. Criminals look for people that are being inattentive and feeling safe. So always, what I've learned over the years is always have a swivel head, and I'm sorry I'm giving you this tip, and I'm not trying to preach, but I truly want you to be safe. And please, I know you feel like this is a safe community, but how do you stop a criminal from coming in or driving through your city? That's what we're talking about. We want to know who those criminals are. So if you think we have a safe community, ask the people that cars have been stolen, their houses have been broken into, they're held at gunpoint. All those different things are going on. Crime is not stopping. And I'm glad you feel safe, but please take the tip and always know your surrounding, because crime can happen to you at any moment.
Anyone else? Councilmember Woodard?
Yeah, I don't want to stretch this out too much. I just wanted to revisit the thank yous, which really, again, go to folks who are here today, folks who took the time, and more importantly, who expressed themselves social media and then took it to the public record. And really, that's the message I want to say here, is that you have really activated a power source that perhaps you haven't realized, which again is the power of the public record, meaning that everything that you submitted is helping this council here, but is absolutely now searchable for other cities who are having these same conversations. You've done a lot of homework for folks who now don't have to go and ferret out, and they can actually instead pick up, well, where is that particular case, as opposed to where we're standing now, where it's still out. So again, I just wanted to say thank you all. This has been a very interesting set of discussions where at the end of it all, everybody wants to say that they're thinking about the same thing, but they're going to have to vote differently. So I don't know how that works. But as one who is in that body, and I want to also say how important this conversation has been for me, because it's definitely helped me understand what am I doing up here. If you've ever watched any of the videos, you'll see this last couple of months in particular, I keep saying, well, what are we doing up here? And this is one of those moments. So I want to embrace Councilmember Murray's points, which I've already been doing on my own, and recognizing that what we're in this moment right now as the seven of us is recognizing there's what I think should happen, but then there's also what the people who entrusted you and put you up here think should happen. And I will just say that that's been one of the bigger areas that I have spent most of the time. Because at the end of it all, if you really knew me, you'd know how ironic it is that I appear to be on the side of AI, because any of my students would tell you, if you came to my office and if you come to it to this day in Everett, I have a replica brain chip of the Terminator. And you can laugh if you want to, but again, that's, I think, the path that people think that we're on. There's too many Gen Xers alive to just dismiss the movies now. Which is to say that's kind of how this feels, where we can say, oh, it's just this little tiny piece of it, but it fits into this larger network. But we're in the here and now. And I want to also recognize that it's a trial period, if nothing else, the same way we're talking about what's going to happen in 5 years. Well, what's to say we don't use these first 2 years to learn more about our city, still cut the feed, but we've taken that data. I get it, the sacrifice, the risk is all there. But I keep coming back to seniors and Amber Alerts in my head. We have a very aging population. I personally have the honor of working with more 70 and 80-year-olds than I do 20-year-olds now somehow, which is a beautiful thing, but I also recognize how quickly life turns on us. And I, again, have yet to make it a week out without having seen a senior or silver alert, as they're called, or the amber alerts up on the boards in either direction, which in the spirit of it's not going to get any less of those. And I just keep leaning towards that, even though I recognize the communities I represent and that I come from are speaking loudly and clearly saying, this just feels like another form of surveillance. So I am sitting with that still as we come up on this vote, but I do want to acknowledge that this is how government is supposed to work. So if we get it right, if we get it wrong, and only you will know that, the good news is we get to do it again, and more importantly, we did it out in front of you. So thank you again for showing up. Thank you for using your sense of power with that public record. And this is how we get better as a community. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
So I think I get a chance to talk now. I knew I was reading on social media, so I did my own survey, and I went and I talked to a lot of people from Mountlake Terrace because I knew they weren't going to show up tonight. And I talked to a lot of my friends, and I talked to a lot of other council members from a lot of other cities, and talked about it at the mayor's exchange. And I knew that no matter which way I voted, half of you are not going to like me. But I have to do what I need to do for the city. And amazingly enough, the over several dozen people that I talked to asked questions about this. I even surprised myself. You already know me, and I'm very, very diverse. So you know that my friends are not going to be to the far right, mostly in the middle, and more diverse population. 100% of the people that I talk to about this are for the camera. And I talk to a lot of people from a lot of different places. And so, going to probably be very surprised with my vote, but we're going to vote pretty soon. Shall we? Yes, call for the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I call for the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
No.
That's 5-2. The motion passes. All right. Do we go on to the next item on our agenda?
Thank you for bringing that up, about the 50%. Thank you.
So next on our agenda is the review and vote on the bid award for Ballinger viewing platform and trails with our Parks Project Manager Donella Dale and Recreation Parks Director Jeff Betts.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Donnell Diao, Parks Project Manager, and we are here tonight to review the vote on the bid award for the Ballinger Viewing Trails Platform and Trails construction contract. This project focuses to install trail improvements and a viewing platform on the west side of the park. The agenda tonight will talk about council goals, subject summary, review our design and approach and the experiences, review our call for bids that was issued and our timeline for expected construction, and discuss our finances and budget, and obviously our staff recommendation for this evening. Here are our council goals achieved by the project: growing our vibrant community and responsible governance to ensure desired level of service. This is a project stemming from the Ballinger Park Master Plan. Ballinger Park is our largest park. It's considered a regional park. It's 55 acres, which was formerly operated as a golf course until 2013, at which point we started efforts to develop the master plan that was adopted in 2015 based off of community input and feedback. It's a document that has a phased approach for a variety of different projects throughout the park. Some of the projects that we've been able to complete over the last several years include the Ballinger Waterfront project, which was completed in 2021. We installed a fishing pier and a new floating dock and revamped the boat launch and part of the beach. In 2022 and 2023, we installed the East Side Trail, which connects the Mickey Corso Community Clubhouse with the Ballinger boat launch, and installed the Hazel Miller Universally Accessible Playground off of that East Side Trail. It's a 6,000 square foot playground with soft surface. And more recently, in 2024, we realigned Hall Creek with the Hall Creek Restoration Project and installed boardwalks and a vehicle bridge and planted thousands of native species as a part of the Habitat Restoration Project. So the Ballinger viewing platform and trails project builds on the Hall Creek Restoration Project with an installation of additional trails that would connect the vehicle bridge and the boardwalk with the interurban trail. Again, the project focuses on the west side of the park, which is typically the passive area focused on habitat and wildlife experiences. We used the conceptual plan from the master plan as a starting point and worked with various agencies as well as the public to develop the plan. We have multiple materials for a variety of trail segments. We have an 8-foot wide asphalt path connecting the vehicle bridge out to the interurban trail. We have gravel and boardwalk moving southeast out towards the viewing platform and crossing, the boardwalks crossing the wetlands. We have a mulch trail that meanders between the ponds to the north, and off of the interurban we have a brand new entry portal that will be a very visible and identifying entry into the park from the west side. And of course we have the viewing platform, which will launch from the shoreline and curve out over the water approximately 120 feet and curve back towards the Hall Creek Channel, giving you views of the shoreline. This project, in order to install all these elements, had to go through an extensive permit process for land use. Due to the location, which falls within the shoreline planning area, there are several agencies with jurisdiction, and we needed a variety of permits to install these features. We worked with city staff, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Ecology, and the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to gather all the necessary permits and land use approvals to move forward with this project. The design has several elements, as I just mentioned, for park users to experience. We surveyed the public and utilized that feedback to help shape these elements. Here in the image, you can see the bright and eye-catching entry portal off of the interurban trail. Again, we have a variety of pathways depending on which direction you go and path you take throughout the west side. And of course, that viewing platform, which you may have noticed the location shifted a little bit east from the conceptual plan. And that was due to a couple things, which include there was an existing clearing on the shoreline, which meant that we didn't have to remove native material and required less mitigation for removing that material. So there was kind of a clear viewpoint from the alternate location on the east. It also allowed us to sweep the platform out and curve it to the east and have a view of the creek, which we thought was a neat feature. And it also was a greater distance from the neighboring properties on the west side of the park. Once permits were secured, we published a call for bids in March. On April 15th, we received 3 bids, all of which were over the project budget. The lowest responsive bidder was Sunset Grill Construction at just over $2.2 million. The proposal and contractor were reviewed and determined to be responsive and responsible. If we include an 8% contingency, the total construction is approximately $2,390,000. And here's what the timeline will look like going forward with the bid award tonight. We would execute a contract here in June and shortly after issue a notice to proceed so that we can get underway within the fish window, which starts in mid-July for the in-water work. Construction would occur over summer and fall, and we would work on final acceptance after that. Noting that the bids came in over budget, staff worked to evaluate options for financing as well as other alternative approaches. On the left, you'll see the starting approved capital budget for the project, which we have about $1.5 million. This figure includes design, permitting, construction, and administration. Included in the original budget, we have financial support from partners from the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office. We have ALEA funds. We also have funding from Primera Blue Cross, as well as our neighboring city of Edmonds partners. So we see that we have the funding sources on the left, and on the right, we have our anticipated expenditures and an obvious gap in between. Stepping through our thought process and kind of evaluation of the project and our budget, if the city were to reject the bids and rebid this in 2026, we could rebid all or part of the project, maybe the land or water component, and see what bids come in at. The challenge with this scenario is we don't know if bids would come in any lower. And likely, based on, we have not seen any trends or indications that pricing would go down. Second, there's a chance that we risk some of our secured funding from our partners with a delay. Extensions would need to be executed, and none of those are guaranteed. Third, we would need to review our permit extension with the Army Corps of Engineers for the nationwide permit that we have secured for this project. If we do go back and rebid a portion of this project to make it more affordable, we would also have to execute a scope change with our RCO partners, because at that point we would not be completing the full scope per our grant agreement, which would then reduce our funds that we would be awarded from RCO. Other thoughts that were discussed is the fact that this project is also restricted to doing in-water work, which we need an HPA and have a certain time frame for which we can complete that in-water work. So if we don't move forward with it now, then the project is at least a year out. We also looked at other project priorities, one of which was Evergreen. Evergreen has its own financial challenges as well, with similar bids coming in over budget. However, with Evergreen, we are able to segment that and proceed with moving forward with the tennis court renovations at this time, and are currently seeking extensions for the turf and infield portion. For both of these projects, kind of as a comparison, there's individual funding and grants that are only able to go towards certain project scopes. So for instance, the Ballinger project has ALEA funds, Aquatic Land and Enhancement Account funds, that are specific to the scope of work related to Ballinger. Similarly, with the YAF and funds that are supporting Evergreen, those are specific to those recreational activities at that park. So despite the cost increases, we are proposing to move forward with the Ballinger project and complete a budget adjustment, award construction contract, and keep this project moving forward. Some of those reasons are it's a community priority. The project aligns with our long-term project goals and as a part of the Ballinger Park Master Plan. This project also builds on prior successful work, such as the Hall Creek project, and makes those final connections to the west side and the interurban trail. It also validates and recognizes the money that we've already spent in design and permitting, which is about approximately $400,000. It also prevents expiration of permits and the potential to risk funding from our financial partners. It also avoids what we anticipate to be a higher future cost for the project in the future if we were to delay it. In order to move forward and close the funding gap, we are proposing to execute a budget adjustment and reallocate a little over $1 million to cover construction, administration, and an 8% contingency. The funds are being collected from a variety of finances. We're looking at collecting end fund balances from completed projects as well as park impact fees. We're also pulling additional other CIP funds from projects that will not be moving forward, such as Evergreen 4-5, which we know will not be moving forward with the grant funding associated with that. So we'll be utilizing that to supplement and backfill what we need for the Ballinger Park project. So these monies will allow us to move forward with construction this season and complete the project as a part of the overall Ballinger Park Master Plan. Tonight, we're asking council to authorize the city manager to amend the project budget to $2,583,405 and award the construction contract with Sunset Grill Construction LLC for the completion of the Ballinger Viewing Platform and Trails project in an amount not to exceed $2,211,902.63. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you guys have.
All right. Are there any questions? Councilmember Sonmore?
I'll just ask some questions because we have people in the audience just so they can hear. But what we had discussed last time when you brought this forward is the way I understood it, either we do it now or we probably won't be able to do it again. And you kind of explained that we could take these monies and maybe put them somewhere else because these monies can only be spent on certain things. So they can't go to a police car, they can't go to hire somebody. So they're there for specific reasons to help with our parks and different things. So we know right now we can't do Evergreen, but we know that we do have these funds, but they're gone over because cost overrides have happened. But we do have certain windows and we do have certain monies that have already been put into this project. So the way I understood it is if we want this project to happen and we want to enhance our former golf course that now is kind of a passive park per se, we would be looking to vote on this. And I appreciate all the work that you guys have gone into doing this. I serve on the Park and Rec, so I've heard this pitch about 4 times, it seems like at least. And so I just really appreciate that. And I'm one that always likes to preserve as much of our environment as possible. But to me, looking at this, I think it would really enhance the person's participation in the park. I think it's a very nice project. I think all the work that has been done, all the monies that have been put into it would be a nice enhancement to our city.
Thank you, Mayor. In the spirit of we have folks here and we use coded language, I want to just see if we can get as bare bones as possible. Effectively, what you're telling us is we're in too far right now to turn back around, right? I mean, let's just call it what it is. We spent a lot of money. If we were to say no, not only would we damage relationships because we show that we're not afraid to just walk away from projects that we've been talking about for a long time because the price tag freaked us out. And more importantly, you have found means to at least mitigate some of that unexpected cost because other parts of the process didn't come through, so we're able to shift that. And that money, again, as we learned last time together, and we just heard, would just be sitting there because there would be no project for it to be assigned to other than perhaps this one. So is that a fair description from a layman's perspective?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands going up. Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to amend the budget as proposed, adding $1,035,593.02 to this project for the total of $22,583,405.24 million for construction and contingency, and to award and execute the construction contract with Sunset Grill Construction LLC for Ballinger Viewing Platform Trails project in an amount not to exceed
$2,211,902.63 in a form substantially similar to the contract attached.
Second. Second.
Second? Okay. Are there any discussions? Then we'll go for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. Thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to extend the meeting until 11 p.m. tonight.
Second.
All right, we're going to extend the meeting to 11 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Our next presentation tonight is the,
It's fine. This next one we should, though. Or, sorry, the following one. The transportation improvement.
all right, so the next on our agenda is the first review of recommended code amendments for middle housing with our Community and Economic Development Director, Christy Osborne, and team. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Christy Osborne, Community and Economic Development Director. It's been a long evening, so we're going to try to condense what we're presenting tonight, but in saying that, if there's any particulars that you would like us to go over after our presentation, please don't hesitate to ask us for more information. So we're here to present 9 draft ordinances that are interwoven in our code that deal with providing for essentially middle housing. So it's focused on our residential zones, which in our comp plan, we've kind of did a wholesale modification of most of our zones in the city. And so we changed those zones to an R1, 2, 3, and 4 zone. And so this work is the outcome of those land use designations, and then all the supplemental materials that would go along with that. So design standards, what are we doing for parking, and a host of other things that are impacted by those changes. So this evening, we're before you. The council had requested last time we spoke to you that you wanted to have 2 work sessions before you held your public hearing. I would remind everyone that I know that this is a lot of information. It's coming at you fast, but under the circumstances of the requirements of the state, we have to have middle housing adopted before the end of June. So thus the fast and furious work. So anything that we can hear from you this evening that we can take back and work on for the next work session would be extremely helpful for us, because we're going to come back with a few recommended staff changes based on public comment and trying to make the drafts better than I would say they are right now. Planning Commission held their public hearing on these draft ordinances. Unanimous recommendation of approval on all 9 things that are going to come before you as far as amendments and additions and deletions to our municipal code. So with that, I won't delay. I'll let Heidi and Mackenzie take it from here with our slides. And like I said, if there's anything of particular after reading the materials that you would like us to address, we'd be happy to do that.
Thanks, Christy, and thanks, council members, for having me back to talk about middle housing. I'm Heidi Oyen with Methuen, and Mackenzie Visser is here with Echo Northwest. Based on your feedback from last meeting, as Christy said, we've come back with a second draft of the code, and are seeking your feedback tonight. And due to the late hour, tonight we'll just go over residential standards. Everything else is in your packet, and if you would like any questions, we can go over it again. So in your packet, you see comments from the Planning Commission hearing, both public comment and their comments. We've incorporated their recommendations, their specific 5 recommendations, into your packet already. Okay, residential standards. These are the conventional residential standards that primarily regulate the scale of development with common elements such as density, height, and setbacks. And these are the zones you mapped in the comp plan process, residential 1 through 4. As defined in that process, these zones are meant to start with the lowest density and scale in R1, and then they scale up incrementally, with R4 having the most density and the largest scale. These R3 and R4 zones are usually around town center and other neighborhoods where you can support more people with transit and walkability. This is the first portion of the larger development standards table in Chapter 30. The standards set a minimum lot sizes consistent with the existing RS 4800 zone. And for allowed density consistent with the state's HB 1110 middle housing law, in the R1 zone, you'll need to allow 2 units per lot, or 4 per lot with a bonus for affordable housing. In the R2 zone, we've opted for a baseline of 4 units per lot, and then bonusing up to 6 with affordable housing. And to be fair for the larger lots, above 9,600 square feet, the allowed densities use a sliding scale of lot area per unit as shown. Then for R3 and 4, we've opted to forego any density caps, instead relying on other standards to control the scale of development. 2 ADUs are allowed on any lot per HB 1337, and there's more info on those in your packet. Continuing the table, we heard your concerns about lowering the lot coverage maximums and really not leaving enough room for families to add on single-story additions or ADUs, so we raised these percentages to what you see in the table now. This is quite a change from last time. So lot coverage gets bigger per zone, starting at 45% in R1 and reaching 65% in R4. In R1 and 2, lot coverage is higher than previous maximums, which allows people to add on those single-story additions and ADUs. And then R3 and 4, we've kept the existing coverages since those seem to be fitting middle housing nicely now. So the big change since the April meeting is proposing floor area ratio, or FAR for short, as the main scale control across the zones. And so I think you probably all know that FAR is the ratio of the building area allowed on a lot to the lot area itself. And so we're essentially offering more floor area when you build more units. So single family houses are allowed a 0.5 FAR, 2 units are allowed 0.6, 3 units get 0.8, and then in the R3 and 4 zones, they can go up to 1.4 FAR by right. For bonusing, R3 can go up to 1.8 FAR, and the R4 zone goes up to 2.4 FAR. We would also increase FAR by small increments when providing certain benefits that you see in the blue list at the bottom. So these are the bonuses, and I'm not going to cover them in detail tonight, but we can list them here. So on-site tree retention, sustainability certification, new alleys or portions of alleys, mid-block connections and half-block connections, improved parking courts, and shared driveways. We've illustrated these proposed numbers in the 6 images shown here on a prototypical 7,200 square foot Mountlake Terrace lot. They each max out their FAR for their densities, all but the last represent a townhouse, and then the last one's kind of a multiplex. So I'll skip the detail here, but happy to answer any questions about that. And then these tables describe unit sizes based on the FAR maximums. And again, you can see the detail in your packets. They're for 2 different lot sizes and show how buildings can get bigger when the lot gets bigger. And then the proposed height standards, these have been simplified a little bit since April because FAR is doing a lot of work for us that we don't need height to do for us anymore to scale the zones. In the R1 and R2 zones in the left columns, we've changed the maximum height to 3 stories, which is the existing height in your current RS zones. The Planning Commission was interested in separately regulating the height of buildings in the front yard or front portion of a lot versus the rear portions of lots, really to allow for more backyard light and privacy. So in the R1 and R2 zones, we're keeping the rear heights at 2 stories and then bonusing up to 3 stories. And then in the R3 and 4 zones in the right columns, base heights are 3 stories in both the front and the rear lot, except stacks can go up to 4. Yes, question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I appreciate this. You must live this all day, and you think you're speaking English right now. I acknowledge the words are in English. That said, when you said the height standards are being handled in essence by the FAR, that was a good chance for me to go, wait, that's a chance to check FAR. So effectively what you're saying is we don't have to worry about the height, because before we worry about the height because you'd be too close to the right of way and overshadowing, and so are you saying by giving more space they can back up so we don't have to worry about how high they are? Is that kind of where we're at? I'm just trying to get my head around.
Kind of. So before we had FAR, so FAR is it's a volume measurement, essentially. You can put it on the site however you want. You get area and you have to stack it.
Okay.
Before we had that, we only had lot coverage, which was kind of the horizontal control, and height, which was the vertical control. And so we had to scale each of them very carefully to scale up the zones.
Yes.
Now when we have FAR, it's doing both of those things for us, and so we were able to simplify the height.
I think I follow that. And so council, correct me if I'm wrong. I come on council right as we're rezoning here, and I'm thinking about the step backs. That's in essence what we're talking about. We don't have to regulate step backs anymore. Is that fair? I'm trying to put that in our world. Your world's beautiful, I'm sure, but how does it match up here, what we've seen in this city? Is that a fair comparison? Getting my head around this?
You were talking about wedding cake design.
Yeah. And I know what a step back is. I'm trying to figure out, is that what we're talking about in essence now, not having to do anymore?
No.
We still have setbacks. The issue that Planning Commission wanted to address is the impacts to adjacent properties where you would have a taller structure in the rear, kind of overshadowing the neighboring property. So almost doing kind of a wedding cake scenario where you would have less impact the closer you are to neighboring properties and a little less and you could go up higher when you're closer to the street because you're having less impact. We still have minimum setback requirements, just trying to be cognizant that we're going to have a lot more density and impact to the surrounding neighbors. So how do we do both?
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And this is that setback table, so it's kind of rounding out the table here. Front setbacks are reducing slightly from existing, 15 or 10 feet, depending on your zone, so you still have plenty of room to plant trees and things in the front yard. Rear yard setbacks are also reduced from current requirements, but just in the R3 zone. And in R2, the setbacks are based on unit count. In all the zones, rear setbacks for buildings under 15 feet tall could be reduced as well. So not really a tiering, but allowing less of a setback when you're lower. And then the side setbacks are what the Planning Commission was really talking about. And so you see in the R3 and R4 zone, if you're 1- and 2-story building, you can be 3 feet from the property line, then 5 feet if you're 3 stories, and 7 feet if you're 4 stories. And so we're not saying, we're saying, or the Planning Commission is asking if that can be tiered, rather than if your building is 4 stories, the whole thing has to set back, if that makes sense. Okay. The blue text in the table are basically the bonus elements. I think I'll stop there. We have a lot more material, as you know, from your packets, but happy to discuss any questions you have and really hear about those topics that you might be interested in diving into next week.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for coming. Appreciate the opportunity to visit this before the public hearing. So if there is either feedback from others or thoughts of the council, there's an opportunity to hopefully incorporate that. I will say I appreciate the incorporation of the feedback from the last meeting. This is significantly different than what we looked at originally, and I appreciate all of the work, particularly given the tight timeline. I think from at least my perspective, this is far easier to understand and wrap my head around, and so I'm hopeful that that translates for other people as well. But so I wanted to start there, and I appreciate the work. I think things that, yay for the bonuses for, public good sorts of items. I think that's phenomenal. Just, I guess, maybe small questions. I'm curious why no bonus for affordability in residential 1 or residential 2?
In 1 and 2, there's a bonus of getting more units. So is this the right one? No, let's go up one. So you get more units and therefore you get more floor area ratio. And then if you follow along in the blue on the rest of the tables, right? So this one is covering lot coverage and FAR. They're offered bonuses for that, for affordability.
Are you, sorry, I'm looking in the blue, down second row to the bottom.
Oh, no bonus.
Yeah, it says no bonus for additional FAR for affordability. So they don't get any additional floor area ratio for affordability, even though they get more units for affordability?
Well, they get the FAR with the units. So there's no additional on top of that. So if you see the blue text under R1 and R2 and maximum floor area ratio, under 3 and 4 units, they're getting to build more area than anyone else can on the site unless they have affordable housing. So it's kind of coming with the unit bonus. And maybe it should be clarified that says more FAR is offered with the bonus, or we could even move those numbers down to help it make sense. Christy's nodding, yes.
Yeah, okay. I was like, I don't know that I'm 100% following. I'm not going to lie at this point of the evening, but yeah, I will say that was something that was not clear to me as I was reviewing, and something that, yeah, I think it would be helpful to spell out so that folks understand. And then the only other, and this is a little thing, but I think it's an important one, so I wanted to make sure I named it tonight. It talks about signs affirming public access may be posted. I think that's phenomenal. I love that we are offering opportunities to increase public access to spaces through, various bonuses. But I think it should be not a may be posted, but shall be posted. You can say that people can utilize this walkway through your property, versus, I think if that is something we are giving up something for, it should be very clear to the public that they can access that space. And I think we've seen kind of confusion sometimes with planned unit developments where there is shared space with the community, but the community doesn't necessarily understand that they can access that space. And so I think spelling that out and making sure that the public good really is benefiting from those, from those things would be really helpful. But I think given the time, those were the things that stood out, but I look forward to hearing other feedback, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat tonight.
Thanks for the feedback.
Anyone else before we move on? Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, great work. I really appreciate it. As you know, I'm a strong supporter of us moving forward with this overall. There's a huge need for, as we've discussed, a huge need for expanding affordability, expanding our choices, options, and increasing overall supply of housing in our community, and this is an important step forward. I think many of us are scrambling as you've been scrambling for the last several months, so we're now scrambling to catch up and
review everything, particularly the actual code language. Just a couple of comments in general, which it sounds like you've incorporated some of it based on what you've said tonight, but things like increasing lot coverage, allowing increased lot coverage, looking at building heights rather than number of stories. I'm sorry, looking at number of stories rather than focusing on height. Reducing backyard setbacks to encourage more additional dwelling units. Recognizing that when we want to encourage things like alleyways, they're going to require heavy incentives because they're having to give up land for the development, so increased incentives are going to be important. Clearly defining affordability and the bonuses for each of the areas. But that all said, also generally having a perspective of not being overly prescriptive and focusing on objectives and what we want to achieve rather than constraining the developers by being, saying too much, putting in too much detail. Overall, the overall thing that I have mentioned before is, the overall thing I've mentioned before that I'm concerned about is going to be feasibility. We've talked about, reaching out to those people that are actually going to be building the product and ensuring that this pencils out, because if it doesn't pencil out, all of this, we're not making any headway, which is the most important thing is seeing this product on the ground, right? And so I'm looking forward to hearing what the feedback the outreach has been, the feedback has been, and again, overall, just ensuring that we're going to see this product in the near future.
So we have reached out to the master builders and worked directly with Landsberg Quality Homes because they reached out to us, and we did as well before as part of our interviews. I think that, as stated previously, this team is committed to trying to present a product to this council that actually works, that we would like to see middle housing, which is what we've been saying as a community for years and years and years, in comp plans that predate myself and others on this council. So with that, that's why we did economic analysis, and where we understand that there may be increased difficulties in making sure we have a diversity of housing types, of trying to build in incentives to make that possible. One of the things we also talked with Planning Commission about is this is an attempt, our first attempt to do the best work that we can, but as we move forward and we utilize this zoning to come back next year, and if we're seeing where we're getting stuck on certain things, that we move forward with making those changes to these codes, so we're not standing in the way of certain types of developments from occurring in the city.
Thank you.
We on public comment?
No one signed up, but I do think it'd be good to offer an opportunity if anybody wants to.
Is there anyone in the audience? Oh, are we going to open it first? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this subject? I guess not. So today we're not, so we're going to be voting on it on the June 26th. All right, so I guess that is it for tonight then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is the review of the 6-year transportation improvement plan with our traffic engineer, John Merrick.
Can I begin by saying I hope you like that promotion I gave you to city engineer instead of traffic engineer.
Did I say the wrong thing?
No. He's more worried about pulling out the presentation.
On this next one?
Yeah, no action.
Yeah, I was looking that up.
Open up public comment because Curtis wants to speak. Great, thank you. I should here. Takes a village. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm going to try and do the impossible tonight. I know when I start talking, I can talk really fast, if you recall from my last presentation. So I'm going to try and slow that down a little bit, but keep things concise and somewhat to the point. So my name's John Merrick. I'm the city traffic engineer. And tonight I'm here to talk about the 6-year transportation improvement plan update. This is spanning between for 2026 through 2031. Oops, actually. So the purpose of my presentation tonight is really just for like informational and discussion purposes, and to set the stage for adopting the 6-year update, the 6-year TIP update at the June 26th meeting with public hearing. The 6-year TIP is consistent with several council goals, including growing our vibrant community, responsible governance to ensure desired level of service, and environmental sustainability and resilience. For legislative history, the TIP is updated every year. So the last time this came before you, that was in June of last year, where we adopted the 2020 to 2030 TIP. And excuse me, before that it was February 15th, where we adopted the 24-20 to 29 TIP. That was a pretty short period because we were a little bit late on putting together the 6-year TIP for the 24-29 year. Just for background, I'm sure most of you recall kind of this as an update previously, but what the TIP is, the Transportation Improvement Plan, is really just a planning document that outlines kind of the proposed transportation projects and funding priorities. It helps guide investments for roads and transit and bike and ped infrastructure that meets the community's needs and kind of sets us for our future growth. The TIP is required, we're required by state law to have a 6-year TIP and to update it annually. Once we have an adopted transportation improvement program, we then submit that to Puget Sound Regional Council and WashDOT, and then they incorporate our TIP into the state transportation improvement program. And what that allows us to do is it makes us eligible for funding for like federal and grant and state grants. So looking at the revenues for this list of projects, it really is consistent with the 25-26 adopted budget. So if you look at the budget, the capital improvement program, you'll see kind of we've got a list of some annual funds that contribute to these projects and then some supplemental funds. So some of the annual funds include the transportation impact fees, REAP funding, road impact fees, gas tax,
and Transportation Benefit District funds. On top of that, we have some supplemental funds coming from some Department of Commerce grants, $2.4 million in grants. We're also applying for a WashDOT mobility grant for $5 million. And we currently have an application in for a $23.3 million build grant, formerly the RAISE grant. So those expenditures would be going towards the list of projects that we have. And our list of projects, we kind of break them down into funded and unfunded. Most of the funded projects are really kind of annual programs that we've set up. So the annual programs we have are the street overlay program, about $700,000 for the overlay program. The signal rehabilitation program, and that's where we replace one signal cabinet and one controller for our signals annually to make sure our signals are operating appropriately. $100,000 for Americans with Disabilities, like our ADA sidewalk installation and maintenance fund. So that funds construction of sidewalks and curb ramps. $10,000 for our bicycle program, which primarily goes for restriping and striping new bike lanes. And then $10,000 for our neighborhood traffic safety program. And that's really is geared towards spot improvements, working closely with communities when they have concerns about traffic safety on local streets. So those are the kind of the annual programs that we have. And then for larger capital projects, currently we have one kind of partially funded project, and that's the Main Street Phase 2. And that's where that project is the continuation of the Main Street project, taking kind of the similar improvements for 236 and then extending those on 56 from 236 up towards 230th. The limits of that project will really be determined about with the type of funding we can still secure. So we don't know yet whether we're successful in our mobility grant application or our build grant. Kind of the results of those will help determine the scope of what that project will eventually be. So, as far as unfunded projects, I have Main Street on there as well because since it's partially funded, it's not fully funded. I have it in both spots. But we also have our Main Street Phase 3 project where we're looking at just trying to secure funding for just a design phase so that we can come up with what we want 57th to look like. This is part of the Main Street project. And so this would be for design. Construction would come when those properties redeveloped, and they would implement through their development elements of the 57th Improvement Project. Other unfunded projects I've got listed. Here's a map that shows kind of the remaining projects, unfunded projects. We've got 8 other projects aside from, 9 other projects aside from Main Street 2 and 3. And I break those down into a couple different categories. So the first category is I'll leave it up. Our pedestrian and bicycle safety projects. And those are projects like our 48th Avenue West bike lane. This would reconstruct the sidewalk on the west side of, I'm not sure why this has gone to this phase.
You could just get off Zoom.
Should I hold?
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Hold for just a second, John, because the audio for...
Yeah. Okay.
It's back on.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you. So the 48th Avenue West sidewalk and bike lane project. This is reconstructing the sidewalk on 48th Avenue West between 236th and 244th. If you're familiar with this, right now there is kind of a ad hoc sidewalk. It's constructed basically with extruded curb and a little bit of landscaping to provide a bit of a buffer between the roadway and a pedestrian space. So this project would actually reconstruct that portion of the roadway with a raised sidewalk, an amenity zone, and then incorporate bike lanes on that stretch of 48th. The next project is 244th Street reconstruction. And this is really a project to install sidewalks and bike lanes on 244th between Cedar Way and 56th Avenue West. This is a project that would be done in coordination with the City of Shoreline, since 244th is kind of our city limits, and we only have control over the northern half. So it would be something we would reach out and kind of do in conjunction with City of Shoreline. The next project is 214th sidewalk construction. This would construct sidewalk on 214th between 40th and 44th, and what that is, it's really the connection from the backside of the high school to 44th. Currently, there's bits of sidewalk, but it's not a contiguous sidewalk along that stretch, so this would fill in those missing pieces, so we had a complete connection. 52nd Avenue West sidewalk is the next project, and that's constructing sidewalk between 222nd Street and 244th. This stretch of 52nd is actually a local access street, but we do have, it's a connection to the Mountlake Terrace Elementary School. So it's just kind of, there again, filling a missing gap, extending that sidewalk a little bit closer to the park, actually. And then the last project in this category, I would say, is the 44th Avenue Road Diet. If you recall from my report on the annual traffic report, we talked about 44th, and on 44th has, the speeds on 44th are a little bit higher than what I think we'd like to see, and kind of one of the higher, our faster moving streets in the city. So what this would do is repair the pavement, so it was good pavement, and then restripe the roadway going from a 4-lane configuration to 1 lane each direction with a center turn lane and bike lanes. And so it's really taking that cross section that currently stops at 226 and extending that to the north all the way to 212th. Some of the benefits of a road diet are that we typically see slower speeds in that type of a configuration, provides a safer spot for cyclists. The 2-way left turn lane provides a safer movement for drivers turning onto or off of the street. So it's really a great safety project all the way around. The next set of projects are intersection improvements. That would include 236th Street at 58th and working towards installing a traffic signal at that location. We currently have a rectangular rapid flash beacon to help pedestrians cross, but with the volume of traffic, as we feel a signal would help improve traffic flow on there and also improve safety both for vehicles and pedestrians. This is partly in the Main Street Phase 2 vision, but it could be a standalone project on its own, or depending on the funding we get, we're able to secure for Main Street Phase 2. It could be a portion of that project. The next project is 212th and 48th Avenue West intersection improvement. It's a T intersection on 212th. I think my biggest concern is making sure we've got good pedestrian facilities there, so that this project could range from either a rectangular rapid flash beacon to help pedestrians cross, but what we'll be doing is kind of studying this to see if it meets the warrants for a full signal, and if that's met, then we'll be shooting for installing a signal at that location, securing funds for a signal. And then the last for the intersection improvements is 220th and 58th. And there again, this was another intersection we talked about during the annual traffic report, and trying to make that intersection operate a little bit safer and more efficiently. So looking at kind of evaluating options for either a roundabout or a traffic signal. So this is really kind of a two-part project. The first part would be completing a more formal study, kind of looking at those two options to see which gives us better operations and a higher level of safety. Once we kind of determine that, then we would be looking, applying for funds to actually construct those improvements. So those are the intersection improvements.
We have a question here.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, can I just ask real fast? I know it's getting late, but the roundabout, haven't we already done this study?
I don't believe we've done a study for a roundabout at this intersection, how it would operate.
On 220th?
At 220th and 58th? If so, that was before.
Yeah, yeah, right down from St. Pius.
Yeah, the always stop.
Where it used to be a two-way stop, now it's a four-way stop.
It's an always stop, correct.
Yeah, I swear we did that study.
I don't think we did.
Remember, we had
happened.
tons of conversations on why a roundabout, because we were all like, a roundabout, yeah.
I think there might have been some just preliminary kind of evaluation whether a roundabout would actually be feasible, whether there's enough right of way, and I think there is, but I don't think we've looked at it from an operation standpoint. You know, one of the keys to that is the northbound on-ramp for I-5 is so close, and at times that traffic backs up through that intersection. So it's like, how does that operate with it? How would that operate with a traffic signal, or how it's so?
And that's, and so you bring it up, because that, I remember, you know, roundabouts at the time we were talking about it were so new, we all wanted traffic light, and they said, well, it was too expensive, but a roundabout would make the traffic flow a lot better. And so, and then we looked at the easements on either side, so.
Yeah, so I think it's just kind of formalizing, if that has been done in the past, and then I think it would be time to kind of like update that, and then, like I say, do that comparison of those two options to kind of suss out which is the better option and what would be, you know, the preferred route that we would want to take. So, and then the last segment would just our street improvement project. So that's Main Street that I talked about before, kind of looking at continuing kind of those types of improvements that we see that we've already completed on 236, kind of doing that style of improvements on 56, starting at 236 and moving forward depending on the level of funding we're able to secure. So that's Main Street Phase 2, and then Main Street Phase 3 is the design element. So the last one of those is just pavement restoration on 220th between the interurban trail and 52nd. There's sections of the pavement in particular that are really beaten up, and so that section we need to do kind of a pavement restoration project along 220th Street. So, yeah, so that's the third project.
And we have another question right here.
Yeah, comment actually. Thank you.
Comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on Main Street Phase 3, can we? This is going to be important for the public hearing. Yeah. But just make it clear in the presentation. In fact, I would put behind Main Street Phase 3, just put in parentheses design. Yeah. And then make it clear during the presentation how this is going to play out, because we're going to hear about the concerns about this. So just let's make sure that we're clearly
about that,
sharing to the public during the public hearing process exactly what the intentions are, where we're at, where it's going from this council standpoint. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, so really, as I mentioned, there's no action asked for tonight. It's just giving you a chance to kind of get up in front of this. If you have some questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. But ultimately, what we are aiming for is adoption of the 6-year TIP. If a lot of those projects sound familiar, it's because they've been on our tip for several years now, where as we work forward towards them, we're just trying to take away. So
I also want to make clear, it says at the June 12th meeting, that's next week, it's actually scheduled for the 26th.
Thank you. Yes.
So it's going to be on the consent agenda, or we're voting on it?
It'll be a public hearing on the 26th, and then you'll vote at that point.
At that point.
Okay, so the public hearing and the voting will be on the 26th. All right.
Correct.
Okay, so that needs to be changed. Okay. Any questions, Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for sticking it out and seeing it through. So I've got questions, and I know it's late, but I have questions. So when we had this conversation last year, I think one of the topics we discussed was that, to your point, this is a list that's existed for a long time. I don't think in my 5.5 years on council we have ever reviewed this in any way where we have reprioritized and kind of shifted what our unfunded project priority list is. And so I think the intention was, if I'm recalling back correctly, is after you were done doing the traffic study, which I know we just got to hear the results of here. I mean, it has not been very long, so I will recognize that piece of it, but I think the intention was to then use that work to then inform a conversation about, do these remain our priorities, or is there some conversation to be had about both additional needs and soliciting input from the community about what maybe isn't represented here, and then having a meaningful conversation as council about what our list looks like in this moment. And so I guess I'm curious, is that, like, where does that fit in the work plan?
You know, I would say it's the way it fits into the work plan. One of the things that I think we would like to move towards is with our neighborhood traffic safety program, one of the things is going out into the community and kind of listening to, asking them what are their concerns that they have, kind of being more proactive as opposed to waiting till they come. And in that type of environment, we can start finding out what are the issues that really concern them, or that direction that they would like to see the city take. We just have to get through some of these planning efforts, so I have time to actually start working on those neighborhood meetings. And I just, so that's kind of in our work plan. I'm hoping to kind of start some of those meetings this year, starting with maybe 2 neighborhoods where we work through that process. And that way we can start kind of pulling a lot more of that information about, like I say, some of the things that they would like to see, what's really concerned on their mind. I would also like to say that I think with this, we're moving towards looking at additional projects that are more multimodal, and particularly a lot of bike projects. So we've identified a bunch of several bike projects that I think would like to kind of move onto this list. We just haven't fully developed kind of the funding for those, kind of what those costs are. So I would imagine on the next update, we definitely will be seeing more multimodal projects with that.
Great. And then I guess just because of the timing slotted for number 5, so that is the 214th Street Southwest sidewalk construction between 44th and 40th, which is, I mean, unfunded, but is unfunded in the amount of $671,000 for 2026. And so I guess I wanted to specifically, ideally discuss that project. I had a chance, I went and took a look at it because I wasn't familiar with it, and I saw the timeline, and I was like, well, it would probably be helpful to know what that looks like if we're approving it, ideally. So took a look at it, and at least my perception in taking a look at that space is that there's sidewalks across most of that space. There is not a sidewalk currently, especially on the north side of the street. There's construction going on where we know there's a car wash going in. And then if you go down, if you continue along the north side of the street, there's actually a sidewalk that's in great condition that goes all the way until you get to like the last 50 feet or so before you hit 40th. Yeah, and so I guess, but I'm curious because then it's interesting. I was looking at a map and turned on the aerial picture. And so the school district owns property at the south end of, it's a dead end street, but it's the south end of 40th, no, 41st, 40th Avenue West. But they put a fence there. And so we're proposing that the sidewalk, we install sidewalk to continue along 214th, but at least my understanding is that moves us into space that is bordered by Breyer and unincorporated Snohomish County. That's not even our space, correct? So would one of them be kicking in for that piece of this project, or what does that look like?
There's a little piece that's, as you get right up to the school, that's unincorporated Snohomish County.
Right.
My understanding is that at one point they did provide some funding to do some improvements through there, and I just don't think we've developed that project. But we would, as we do move forward with this project, it would be, there again, it would be partly in conjunction with Snohomish County, at least approval for doing that. So, but you're right, on the backside, there is a fence on school property, but I do know that a lot of students, there's a number of students who go out that way and they cross at that location and they continue on farther, they continue further to the west. Some of them then cut through and cross 212th, which is also another location I'd like to kind of look at for potential pedestrian crossing improvements. But that's kind of why I'd heard early on when I first got here a couple concerns about students walking along in that stretch. So.
No, and I think that is an important concern. And so I guess I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to look at that in a way where there isn't as much cost impact to us, and whether that is the school district providing a better path that from already available space, because 40th Street has great sidewalks that go down it. So it feels like that would be a very safe way to get students onto campus, or Snohomish County or Breyer kicking in for the piece of the proposed project that would help kind of finish the sidewalk to the current path that students use. I mean, I guess I think it just goes into, like, I would love to better understand the project and have discussion about it if that is our top priority project. And again, we've got lots of projects that would benefit from these funds. I think if there's a way we can do more with the funds that it's unfunded, but if those funds ever appear.
And I would say, the order they come in years may not necessarily be our top priority. When I was looking at these, I was looking at, given the time where we're at right now, what are some projects that we might be able to kind of tick off sooner rather than later? So some of the larger projects, it's going to take us longer to kind of secure funding for it, kind of identify, develop that funding strategy. So they're moved maybe a little bit farther back. This was one project I thought, that it might not be insurmountable to get funding for this and kind of work this project through. So that's why it's a little closer on the scale as far as in the time frame. So, but all these projects, as far as the target time frame, it's a little bit of a hit and miss as far as we develop more sound funding strategies for what we want to shoot for, what type of grants we might want to apply for. And then whether we actually can secure those or not, it will be really kind of how these start to shake out a little bit more.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Well, I'm glad to see some of those projects are still on our list, because I hate to see it go away, because it eventually needs to get done.
Yeah, they're all good projects.
All right, thank you. Do we do a public hearing on this one?
You can.
Are there public comments?
You can offer public comment tonight, or you have a public hearing on this item on the 26th. So not required tonight, but can.
Does anyone, because there is a couple of people here, does anyone want to speak? Go ahead, Kirk.
Is it on? Good late evening. My name's Kirk Ishizaki, West Plaza. Represent commercial property that has tenants such as Double D Meats, Diamond Knot, Snohomish Pie Company, Alberto's. Employ over 100 people. We submitted a public comment today through our land use attorneys. I'd like to go ahead and read that letter that we submitted. Regarding the opposition to inclusion of Main Street Phase 3 in the TIP. Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members, I'm writing on the behalf of our client, West Plaza Marketplace, to express our strong opposition to the inclusion of Main Street Phase 3 in the city's draft Transportation Improvement Plan. We are deeply concerned that this project continues to appear on the capital improvements list, despite clear and consistent feedback from affected property owners and without the proper adherence to city policies. A major tenet of the Growth Management Act is internal consistency within a comprehensive plan. The TIP is a required element of the comprehensive plan and requires consistency with the rest of the comprehensive plan. Yes, the proposed inclusion of Main Street's Phase 3 design work in the TIP has not undergone the required review per the city's comprehensive plan. Policy CF-4.10, require review of all public works and infrastructure projects for displacement risk before the city considers actions and/or budget authorization for projects that would necessitate property condemnation, right-of-way acquisition, and/or eminent domain. To address progress projects and plans, require a one-time review of all current projects and plans for displacement risk before they are authorized to proceed to the next stage. We are unaware of any such review taking place. While the funding is for design of the project only, the project ultimately would cut through private property and would require eminent domain to be accomplished and would displace several small businesses. This impact analysis is required to be completed prior to this project's inclusion on the TIP, which is an action being taken by the City Council so that the City Council can be made aware of the full implications of funding the project. This analysis has not yet been completed. Policy TR-4.11, review all city transportation projects after initial design and before funding for construction to mitigate displacement risk and minimize impact to private property owners, including consideration of projects that may necessitate property condemnation, right-of-way acquisition, and/or eminent domain. Again, while this funding is proposed for the project's design, the, quote, initial design of the project has been completed. It exists on a map, it runs through private property, and in general can be analyzed for displacement impacts. This analysis has not been accomplished, rendering this proposal inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The city must complete this analysis before moving forward with this funding request. Additionally, the city's updated comprehensive plan transportation element did not identify Main Street Phase 3 as a priority project. It is not needed to mitigate transportation impacts and was not evaluated as essential to system performance. We do not believe it warrants potentially taking funding away from a more necessary priority project that deserves funding. Furthermore, the council previously adopted a policy stating the vision for this segment is to potentially implement it through redevelopment, not through eminent domain or city funding. See Comprehensive Plan Policy EV-3.5. Thus, we question why the city is looking to obtain public funding for this segment when council's clear intention, direction, was that the concept is completed through private redevelopment. Our clients have been consistently told by staff and others within the city that this segment should not be city-led or city-funded. As you know, listing a project on the TIP can signal the city's intent. The continued inclusion of this segment is confusing and inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan. We therefore ask that it be removed from funding consideration. We are significantly concerned about the segment's impact to the small businesses that reside in our tenants building. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please feel free to contact me if you would like to discuss this further. Sincerely, our attorneys, McCullough Hill, PLLC. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. And this is going to be, well, I lost it in here.
Be part of the public hearing on June 26th.
Yes. Okay. So that we're having another public hearing on the 12th. Not on the 12th?
Not on the 12th, on the 26th.
We have a meeting on the 12th, this will not be on.
Okay. All right, so this will be in the future then. And so tonight, we're just, tonight is just a report. All right, thank you. So we only have 10 minutes left, and we still have a few items on here. We can have the city manager's report, and then we can have the council liaison reports postponed.
Yeah, I would just say I'll forego most of my report. The only thing I wanted to mention is typically our meetings aren't this busy, but we do have our meeting next week, a canceled one on the 19th for the Juneteenth holiday, and then another one canceled on July 3rd. So tonight's meeting and next Thursday are going to be fairly busy. So.
Okay, so do we want to do the council liaison reports if we can get it done in 10 minutes? If we can get the council liaison reports done in 10 minutes, we can go ahead and do that. Or do we want to extend it for another 10 minutes beyond 11 o'clock? Okay.
You can do yours now.
All right, so why don't we just go ahead with the council liaison reports and then see how far we get before we have to extend, because, all right. So then let's start over there with Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm going to eat up the 10 minutes. Since we're not going to hear the city manager's report, let me start by saying thank you to Congresswoman Susan Del Bene for picking one of our projects of hers to forward at the federal level. So thank you very much for that. Moving to my actual report, I missed this when I was out of the country. 5/12, if you caught it, the Herald produced an article on one of my projects that I have the honor of working with, the African American Leaders and Professional Network. It's listed there, it's posted on the 12th. If you're interested in seeing some of that work, we've had Wally and Donnie, who I've done that work with together, come through this council. I got back on the 17th. Kudos to public transportation. It got me back in time to make a little bit of the time at the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander gathering at Terrace Park. That was amazing. On the 19th, I had the honor at the Carl Gibson Center of hearing State Senator June Robinson speak. She, of course, is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, and the next day we would hear that we had a budget passed for the state of Washington. Yay, state of Washington. On the 20th, I did attend Economic Alliance's sponsored the Snohomish County update. It was at the Boeing Future of Flight. On the 21st, I was up and down, we did a tour of the LNC, Linwood Neighborhood Center, with the Foundation for Edmonds School District, which is to remind you all, if you want to do a tour, let us know. We can get you involved. That was also a segue to say my presidency of the Board of Trustees will come to an end. Very happy about that. It was a wonderful experience. And then that evening made it to the State of the City. Great job, City Manager. Great job, Mayor. On the 22nd, that next day, that was when I was up and down the wire. Once again, kudos to public transportation to allow this to happen. I made it to the Housing Consortium of Everett and Snohomish Counties talk, as well as I was up in Everett, hopped on a bus down to Light Rail, got me downtown to the PSRC gathering, which was amazing, and then we doubled back and we had our study session and our Finance Committee meeting. And then on the 26th, which was Memorial Day, I was able to make it to Floral Hills in Linwood, as well as to Veterans Plaza in Edmonds. And one day would love to see us do something to represent Memorial Day in live time. And then on the 2nd, I was here for the pride flag being raised. Into my report.
All right, Councilmember Sonmore.
Thank you. I'm on 2 liaison boards, and both of those boards meet next week.
Thank you. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. So back on May 20th, we had our monthly Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission meeting a little bit later than usual. They looked over the proclamations that we reviewed tonight, as well as those coming up in July. They also continued to talk about the DEI strategic plan, which again is coming to us here very soon. 21st was State of the City, 22nd was Puget Sound Regional Council's General Assembly and our council work session. The 2nd was the Pride flag raising here at Civic Campus. The 3rd and the 4th and today, prior to our meeting, participated in interviews for board and commission appointments. And then today, was that just today? Yesterday? 4th? The 4th participated in Puget Sound Regional Council's Central Puget Sound Economic Development District Board meeting, and that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
My, excuse me, next meetings are next week and the week after, so no report. Thank you.
Councilmember Page.
Excuse me. On the 21st, MLT State of the City. I'm in the. As you know, I'm assigned to the WRIA 8 Salmon Council, so that next meeting is on the 9th. I'm in the process of getting myself caught up to date to what's going on there. This evening, prior to this meeting, I was over at Diamond Knot with to meet the new executive director and CEO of the United Way of Snohomish County.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the May 13th, I think I reported previously, was the Snohomish County Tomorrow Exploratory Committee, and we identified housing, economic development, transportation infrastructure, and health and human services as the key areas, topics that we're going to look to expand our efforts on. I mentioned that because on the 16th, Mayor Galey and I met with the Snohomish County Executive's Office and Snohomish County Tomorrow staff to prepare for a presentation that we gave on the 20th to the Snohomish County Council, just updating them on our exploratory efforts. On the 21st, had the Snohomish County, had us, Mountlake Terrace City Council, or City State of the City. On the 22nd, had the Puget Sound Regional Council Annual General Assembly, where we adopted the Regional Safety Action Plan, which we've discussed previously, as well as our fiscal year budgets for 26-27 and work plans. And also our very own Snohomish County Executive, Dave Summers, is now the new president of Puget Sound Regional Council. On the later that evening, as Councilmember Woodard mentioned, we have our City Council Finance Committee, followed by our City Council meeting work session. On the 28th, I had the Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee meeting, where we have discussed, I'm just going to zip through all these topics, and if you're interested in more information, just let me know. But we've had briefings on the Affordable Housing Action Plan and HEART goals, and where we are, status on implementation, the regional centers briefing. We had a home builders panel discussion. We've had updates, briefings on the Economic Alliance in Snohomish County, where they have a new interim still, but I think new life, let's just say, with their executive director, Ray Stephenson, former mayor of Everett, coming back to steer that ship back on course. Also had an update from the port, the two ports in Snohomish County, Everett and Edmonds. We've had updates from Chris Collier and the Alliance for Housing Affordability and the Housing Authority, and HASCO, the Housing Authority of Snohomish County, and we should have them out here. I think we've discussed that with a couple of you, but we should have them come out and give us an update on their status and where we're going. Got a lot of exciting things going with HASCO and the Housing Affordability Alliance. Also had the Housing Travel Survey and reviewed the daycare ordinance that Snohomish County adopted recently, and the benefits to that, and how that's going to help hoping to increase daycare centers throughout Snohomish County. Obviously, that applies to Snohomish County proper areas, unincorporated areas. So there might be an opportunity there, although it's going to be more rural areas or suburban areas. I don't know if it necessarily helps us, but it would be worthwhile. Oh, sorry, I'm running late. Sorry, I'll move on, but just FYI.
Can we just vote to extend this another 5 minutes?
Move to extend the meeting 5 minutes to 11:05.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We have another 5 minutes.
I'll try not to take all of it. Sorry. All right. So then that was Snohomish County Tomorrow. Okay, on the May 20th. And then so June 4th had the executive committee for the Snohomish County Tomorrow, where that's primarily our planning committee to move all of our efforts forward with the Snohomish County Tomorrow. Then on the Oh, on the Tuesday, the 3rd, had the Snohomish County Council Presidents, South County Council Presidents and Mayors Pro Tem. The evening of the 3rd and 4th, and tonight we had our board and commission interviews, and earlier today, the mayor and I met with the city manager. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll quickly do mine. I have to go all the way back to May 2nd, where I went to the Seashore Transportation Forum meeting, and on May 7th, I attended the Snohomish County Mayor's meeting in Mill Creek, and then I also attended the AHA meeting that day. And then on the 9th, I attended our former council member and Mountlake Terrace resident, Karen Miller's memorial. And on the 21st, I attended the South County Mayor Pro Tems and
Regional collaboration.
Regional.
And I missed that one, I guess.
Yes. So that was on the 21st, and then and that evening I attended. I was really happy to see all of our council members at our State of the City address, and a lot of people showing up, and it was really a success. And on the 22nd, I attended the PSRC General Assembly, and on the 27th, the Snohomish County Mayor's meeting. We have two. We have the South Snohomish County Mayors, and then we have all Snohomish County Mayors meeting. And then I attended the Mountlake Terrace Chamber event over at Patty's Egg Nest. And then and then this is regional, but I just wanted to just let you know that on the 1st of this month, I attended Frank Chopp's memorial. And on the 3rd and the 4th was a Boards and Commission interview, including tonight. And then I also attended another AHA meeting, and then today I attended the Community Transit meeting, and that's the end of my report. And I did it in less than 5 minutes, I think. On the agenda, it says that the new business. Does anyone have any new business? We have 3 minutes for that. I guess not. So next is adjournment. We are adjourned.
Record